you're going to see something that needs to give me permission to record. So if that, maybe you do, if that popped up on your end, if you will give us permission, and I will tell you why in just 1 second we record. But let's go ahead. So I just shared my screen with you. So everybody give me a thumbs up if you see a big blue flower right now. We are off to a good start. This is good. You guys may want to adjust your view, adjust your settings. I don't know exactly what it's called on your end. It might be called view. It might be called thumbnail view, depending on what you're looking at. I don't want you guys distracted. So you may want to play around with your views and see which setting you prefer, where you can mostly see the screen and the conversation and not distracted by your peers, because we're going to see, we're at home, you know, and there's a lot going on at home. So we're going to help keep everybody focused by playing around with that view. Find the one that you like. And we are going to officially welcome you guys to Carolina School of Real Estate's pre-licensing, 75-hour pre-licensing class. So to start with a brief introduction of who we are, of course, you guys all know or have had some kind of contact with Lane. She sent you guys the email that you use to access this class today. So I know that you have her email address. You can reach out to Lane for anything related to the school. She's a huge help to you guys. She's here for you guys. So reach out to her with anything. We're going to look at Lane's email that she sent you in just 1 second to make sure we saw all the good stuff, because there's some good stuff in that email from Lane. So we want to make sure you saw it all. Another introduction is me. I'm Julie Campbell, and I'm going to be with you guys for the next couple months. So I do ask that you go ahead, page 1 of your brand new notebook, go ahead and jot down my phone number and email, or the cover, the inside cover where you can find it easily. I do encourage you guys to reach out to me anytime you have a question, anytime you have anything related to this class, the material. I always encourage you guys to reach out to me. So you may not think you want my phone number now, but at some point you may wonder what my phone number is. So please go ahead and jot it down now. Same thing with my email. I know my email's long, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Because who am I? I am Julie, the real estate instructor at gmail.com. So that is easier to remember than trying to write all that down. While you guys are jotting that down, just a little bit about myself. I just a couple months ago celebrated 22 years in the industry. I have an administrative background. So I was behind the scenes that nobody really knew about. I did that for, goodness, 13, 14 years. And then one day I decided that I was kind of tired of my real estate agents having all the fun. So I gave up my cushy day job and jumped full-time into sales. I did that for several years, several more years. Somewhere along the line, picked up this teaching thing. And today I wear 2 hats. I'm an instructor here for Carolina School of Real Estate, and I'm also back to my roots, and I'm an administrative role at a real estate firm. So I've gone back to what I know. Everybody have this? You're gonna learn more about me. Trust me. Y'all are gonna learn me. Let's see. Jennifer, welcome. You're new. Jennifer, if I could get you to rename yourself real quick. So if you, now that we're big, I'm not sure, if you find your name in the little box and you click on the 3 little dots there, one of your options is to rename. And if you'll do your first and last legal name, and if you want me to call you something else, that just put it in parentheses or quotation marks. So everybody have my phone number and email address jotted down? Just in case you need me, you got me. So let's talk about a couple class things, rules. I hate that word rules, but they are what they are. So we're going to spend some time in this class learning about the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. For right now, we need to understand that we are here because this class is mandated by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. And because they mandate this class, they do give us some rules. And one of the rules by the Real Estate Commission is your attendance requirements. Good morning, Aubrey. Is your attendance requirements. So the Real Estate Commission's requirement says you cannot miss more than 15 hours of class time. Please write that down. You cannot miss more than 15 hours. And guys, that missed 15 hours is regardless of the reason. There is no excused absence. If you're not here, or if you're not on camera, we can't count you present. And if that time adds up to more than 15 hours, you're not eligible to take the end of class exam. I will talk about the end of class exam in just 1 second. So make sure we're good so far, regardless of the reason. I've heard some good reasons over the years, you guys, and there is no allowable excuse. I mean, I'm talking like gallbladder surgery, jury duty. There is no allowable absence, no allowable excuse. And the reason for this, you guys, the thinking is if you've missed more than 15 hours of class, regardless of the reason, you've missed too much material. You've missed too much to get yourself caught up. So there is a reason for that. So keep track of that. So how do we count you present? Well, in order for me to count you present, I got to be able to see you. You have to have your camera on, and you need to be in front of it where I can see you. Now, we'll talk about breaks. We do take breaks. And when we go on breaks, we want you to turn your camera off because we don't want to see what you do during break. But when we come back from break, you need to turn your camera on. So when we're here, when we're in class, cameras need to be on. The other big thing is we can't have you guys doing other things while we are in class. Hands down, one of the biggest challenges that we faced when we went online to a Zoom platform a little over 3 years ago were the distractions at home. There's a lot going on at home, isn't there? How many people have families and kids and pets and a TV and laundry to fold and dishes that probably need to be done because the kitchen never, ever stops, does it? There's a lot going on at home, isn't there? And this is what we need to eliminate and do away with during class. All those other activities you got going home, your family, the kids, the pets, we need to have a conversation and make sure they understand that during class time, this is us, we are here together. So I ask you guys to please make the effort to be in a distraction-free environment while we're taking this class together. If you need to turn the TV off, turn the TV off. I know we like our daytime shows, our morning, what's on, like Price is Right, and what's the other one? All the other ones, right? I know there's a lot of good stuff on. What about this thing? Is this thing distracting? Oh my gosh. If you find yourself distracted by this thing, maybe leave it in the other room. Like I said, we'll take breaks. So I need you guys to make the effort to be in a distraction-free area, because I'm telling you right now, I can't compete with everything you got going on at home. So find you a good, quiet study place. That could be a good weekend assignment for you. Find a good, quiet study place where you can take class. And again, understanding that if I can't see you, I can't count you present, regardless of the reason. Do I have any questions about this? Okay. I got one big, big no-no. Never allowed, ever. I cannot have you guys in a moving vehicle while on this call. I definitely can't have you driving. I can't have you as a passenger either. There's a North Carolina general statute that says the drivers can't be distracted. And you being in the back seat on your laptop trying to zoom in could be a distraction. So the simple solution to this is you cannot attend this class from a moving vehicle. If I see you in a moving vehicle, I'll remove you from the call. It will count against your time. You're welcome to join us whenever you get to where you're going, but I cannot allow it. We mentioned breaks. We do take a break. We get a 10-minute break at the top of each hour. So we'll take a 10-minute break about 10 o'clock. We'll take a 10-minute break about 11. We'll take a 10-minute break about 12. This is the opportunity for you guys to check your voicemail, check your text, unload the dishwasher, fold your laundry, whatever it is you got to do. I'm telling you right now, those 10-minute breaks go by fast. So you may want to, we'll keep track of that, but don't let that time get away from you. But yes, we do get a break. And guys, with attendance, I recommend that you keep track of your own time. I will keep track of your time, but I think if you keep track of your time, it won't sneak up on you. So if you miss a whole class, you've missed that time. If you log in after 9 o'clock, that counts against you. If you log out before 1, that counts against you if you come back late from break. We'll talk about how breaks work when we're ready for our first break at 10 o'clock. But just understanding, guys, I've seen it. It's 10 minutes here, it's 15 minutes there, and it adds up. So I want you guys to, again, keep track of your own time so it doesn't get away from you. And remember, it's 15 hours, regardless of the reason. There is no allowable, no excused absence. And that does include being distraction. Anything on attendance, how I can count you here, how I can count you present. So far, so good?
Hey, Julie, if we have to step away for a minute for something, do you just want us to put something in the chat, let you know?
That's a great question, Cody. Thank you so much. And yes, that would be great. If you guys could communicate with me, that would be helpful because to Cody's point, I don't have time to stop class every time one of you turns your camera on and off. We just don't, we'd never get through it. So if you can communicate with me via private chat, BRB, and when you're back, then we'll have that. If you come back late from break, you'll also tell me in the chat as well. By the way, I pull a Zoom log after class. It tells me what time you guys log on and what time you log off. Students are really good about telling me when you log on late. Students are not as good about telling me when you log out early. So don't worry, I got a Zoom log. I can see when you're here and when you're not. So we're going to spend, the next couple months talking about why we're here. We're going to spend time talking about why we're here. Before we do that, though, let's go ahead and address why we're not here. Let's go ahead and address what you guys are not going to get. So I am here to help prepare you guys for your exams. So I'm going to talk about those exams in just 1 second. I am not here to teach you guys how to be a successful real estate agent. I'm not here to teach you guys how to get lots of buyer and seller leads. I'm not here to teach you how to communicate with tenants and landlords or how to do an open house or how to make a good open house goodie bag. Not why I'm here. My job is to prepare you for your end of class exams that give you the tools you need to go on to become a successful real estate agent. So we're going to talk about, there's North Carolina licensing law. There's North Carolina commission rules. There's laws and rules, and those are the basics that we're going over in this class. Let's see. We do not need to click a log on button for attendance, just have camera on, full name, and be in front of it. That's absolutely correct. Once you're logged on, once you log on to Zoom, all you need to do is just be on camera. Yep. Okay, good. Thank you. Let me ask you guys a question. Couple questions. How many of you, and I got a series of questions, so as they apply to you, hold your hand up and keep it up. How many of you have ever bought a house before, bought property before? How many of you ever, keep your hand up, how many of you ever sold a house? How many, keep your hand up, keep them up. How many of you ever rented a house or rented an apartment? How many of you ever acted as a landlord? You leased an apartment. Well, I just saw a lot of our hands go up, which tells me a lot of us have personal experience. We've been out there as buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords. Yes? I want you guys right now on day 1 to take your personal experience and put it off to the side. Because I'm telling you right now, your personal experience is not going to help you pass this test or these exams. You will not be questioned on when you bought a house. You're going to be tested on the laws and the rules. And it's been my experience that your experience murkies the water. I'm not saying your experience was right or wrong. I'm not here to tell you that your agent did right or wrong. That's not my responsibility. But it is important that we take that personal experience and put it off to the side because it's not helping you. In other words, I need you guys to start with a clean slate. So what you thought you knew about real estate, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm telling you, do away with it and start with a clean slate. Does anybody, let's see, Seth. Yes, Seth, I can see you. So if you can't see anybody, there's a view button or something that you may want to kind of, I'm not sure what kind of device you're on, how many monitors you have, all that depends. But somewhere there should be some kind of view button if you want to toggle around your people view. If you can just see me, or if you can see like a film strip of people, there's several different options there. Okay. How many of you know a licensed real estate agent? How many of you know somebody that's out practicing real estate probably right now? Okay, that person is going to be very helpful to you once you get licensed. That person may not necessarily remember the license law and commission rule. So if you're going to your licensed real estate agent buddy for help, I mean, how long has it been since they took this class? How long has it been since they've seen this material? So just kind of be careful with them. They know the real world. They know that in practice. I need you guys to know the book. I need us to know the class. Is this making sense? So what I'm telling you guys, there's real world, and then there's pre-licensing world. Y'all know where I need you for the next 2.5 months? I need you in pre-licensing world. So real world, no. Pre-licensing world, yes. All right, one more question. Where are my HGTV fans? It's like confession, isn't it? Turn it off. You guys know that stuff isn't real, right? What? What did she just say? Yeah, that stuff isn't real, you guys. That's reality TV. HGTV is not going to help you pass this exam. What is going to help you pass this exam? The book, the online learning system, which we'll talk about in a second, other tools, other resources. That's what's going to help you once you get the mindset, the mentality of pre-licensing world. Also understand you're not getting all the information about real estate in pre-licensing. We are going to have some puzzle pieces. We're going to give you some puzzle pieces, but we are not completing the puzzle. We are just scratching surfaces in this class. We are introducing you to topics. We can see Michelle now. Hey, Michelle, that was like an hour long effort. It was worth it, though. Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad you got that up and running. So this class is like a puzzle, and I'm only giving you some pieces. We're going to talk about education required after you get your license. We're going to talk about continuing education that you have to take every year while you are licensed. This is just the start, you guys. And again, we're just scratching lots of surfaces. We're introducing you to lots of topics. Have you guys flipped through your book yet? I know you haven't sat down and read it cover to cover yet, but have you looked through it? Because we got some non-real estate agent topics in this class. We have a unit on appraisals. We have a couple units on financing. We have some units on home insurance. So we're not just about real estate, things related to real estate, but we're introducing you to these topics and allowing you to complete the puzzle once you get your license. I have a feeling on day one, most of you are feeling like the little girl on the left. We're dreaming, we're ready. I'm telling you, if you do it right, by the time we're done, at one point, at least, you'll probably feel like the little girl on the right, the other side. So we got a lot of information. There's a lot to go over. I mean, again, if you guys have gotten your book, what is this thing, like 900 pages? We pretty much go through this whole sucker page to page. We pretty much go through this entire book. So is this a lot of information? I mean, if you pick this, you could use this for a weight, right? I mean, this is a lot of information. and it's a lot of work, and it takes a commitment on your part. We'll talk in just a second on various ways that you can commit. I certainly don't want to kill anybody's dream, but just know getting your real estate license is not an easy process. There's work and commitment involved. So I've mentioned some tests, and there are 2 exams that stand between you and your real estate license. So the first exam is our end of class exam. This is what we'll do on the last day of class together. We'll look at a calendar, a class schedule in just 1 second, so we can all make sure we're on the same page. So the first exam is this end of class exam. You get 4 hours. We'll talk about the retake. I also need you guys to go calculator shopping. There is math in this class. Now, I think sometimes when I say math, some of you think I said a 4-letter word that I shouldn't say out loud. It's a bad word, isn't it? Please understand, y'all, this is not a math test. This is a real estate exam with some math in it. And we're going to work through the math section as section. But what I need you guys to do is go calculator shopping. And I need you guys to go out and purchase a basic calculator. Basic meaning it can't store formulas. It doesn't have a whole lot of fancy buttons on it to do a whole lot of fancy things. And I definitely cannot let you use your phone for the exam because your phone has Google on it. The calculator on your phone is really smart. The calculator in my hand, not so much. So I want you guys to go calculator shopping this weekend to get you a basic calculator, because we're going to start doing math next week. And I want you using this calculator now so you can get used to it. So you can get used to working with a not so smart calculator. I got another thing to add to your shopping list in just a second. So go ahead and get your Amazon list ready. Don't order it from Amazon right now. I would consider that a distraction. But make yourself a list. I got to go to Amazon and get a basic calculator, or Walgreens or Target or wherever you like to go. Walmart, doesn't matter. Questions on the calculator. If you're shopping and you're not sure if it'll work, just shoot me a message. Send me a picture. Julie, will this calculator work? I'll say yay or nay. Is that good? We're going to go calculator shopping. Okay. Like I said, we're going to start math as early as next week. So 1 exam is your end of class exam. The next exam, the next hurdle is your state exam. State exam is done at a testing center. There are locations scattered all over the state, North Carolina. We will talk about the process of applying for your state exam, applying for your real estate license. We will go through that whole process. It is way too early to talk about it today, though. So I generally talk about this process about halfway through-ish. And that way, some of you may be ready to start your application, that kind of thing. What I need us to understand right now on day 1 is to become a real estate agent, you got to do 2 things. To get your certificate of completion from Lane, you have to meet my attendance requirements. You have to have class participation. Class participation means when I ask you to tell me something in the chat, you tell me something in the chat. If I ask you to unmute and say something, you unmute and say something. That's how we participate. Again, it's one thing for you to be sitting in front of your camera, but if you're sitting in front of your camera doing other things and you're not paying attention, you're not participating in the class. Also, to get your certificate of completion from Lane, like we said, you have to pass the end of class exam. And we also have a midterm exam that we will take about halfway through. Again, we'll talk more about it. With the midterm exam, I'm not looking for pass or fail. We're just asking you guys to try. So when we say take the midterm, I got to get a score. I don't care if it's a 10%. I got to get a score. Show that you took it. Show that you tried. So there's 3 things to do for us to get your certificate of completion from Lane. Once you get that certificate of completion from Lane, then you go to the testing center, pass your state exam, and guess what? You are now a real estate licensed broker. It's a process, you guys. It's a process, and like I said, it's a commitment. So it's a general idea. These are our goals. And this is my job, you guys. My job is to prepare you for these exams. So that's our focus. The state exam, the Real Estate Commission provides us with a syllabus. The syllabus tells us the things we can expect to see on the state exam. I wrote this class with the syllabus in my hand. So you don't need to wonder, are we going to be tested on this? If we're talking about it, there's a chance you could be tested on. Fair enough? There's so much to know about real estate, and it's so easy to get derailed. We got to stay on track. And I hope that's what I hope to achieve on the first day, is the importance of staying on track, the importance of staying focused. You guys are going to find yourself, as you get going in this material, you're going to find yourself saying things like, well, what about this? And what if that? Guess what? You've derailed. You've gotten off track. We got to keep your focus. We got to keep you on the track. I do encourage you guys to ask questions, communicate. I do want to hear from you guys as time allows. We're on a very tight schedule in this class, but I do want to hear from you guys. But please understand if I say something like, that's off topic, can you and I talk about that outside of class? I'm not being mean. That's me keeping us on track so we can get through the material so you guys can be prepared for your state exam. That's what this is all about, getting you ready for that state exam. Do I have any questions, comments on that?
Julie?
Yes.
So you mentioned the state exam, but you need to pass the national as well. Is that correct?
There's two sections. That's confusing. I know. There's a state exam that offer two sections. There's a national section that are topics that apply to all licensees across the country. And then there's a state specific section, which are things just for our great state of North Carolina. So thank you, Phil. Your state exam is broken down into two sections, and both sections have to be passed. So we will identify as we go through, you'll find in your book, and you'll also see on my PowerPoints, we'll identify what state specific sections are. So you'll start seeing those separations. Anything else about your exams so far? As we've mentioned, there's a lot of information out there. I mean, my goodness, do not go to Google and type in real estate, because you're going to get all sorts of stuff. Yes. You guys may at some point feel tempted to go to Google and type, pre-licensing material, looking for supplemental study material. Guys, I can't validate the internet. We know how Google works, right? Is everything on Google 100% good, 100% right? And y'all go out there and start searching for stuff, and I have no idea what you're finding. So I recommend first, start with the tools that you've been given. Start with what you got. One of your biggest tools is you being here, not just being here, but being present. Another one of your big tools is that big book. We're going to work through this thing together. There's some good information. There's some practice quizzes. Help make sure you have this information. Another tool you've been given so far is the online learning system. I'll take you out and introduce you to that in just 1 second. This is a great platform for supplemental information, things that can help enhance and better allow you to have a better understanding. We also have some additional quizzes in there, again, to help make sure you're grasping the material. I also encourage you guys to make your own flashcards, outlines, notes, whatever. I do have all of my PowerPoints are in the online learning system for you guys right now. So as we start going through the PowerPoints, there's no need for you to write down every single word of the PowerPoint. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Guys, trust me, if we were to print out my PowerPoints, we're probably looking at like 2 reams of paper. Do you want to write all that out for the next? Your hand's going to hurt by the time November rolls around. So we're going to introduce you to some of these tools in the online learning system where you can find the PowerPoints. I think it's more important that you guys listen to what we're talking about instead of trying to focus on writing down every single word. So we'll see that in just a second. Another tool that you guys have. Remember when we started, I hit record and I said I'd tell you why. So I give myself homework assignments sometimes. So my homework assignment to myself for this afternoon, I'm going to create our very own YouTube channel. And at the end of each class, I'm going to put the link, the recorded class, into our YouTube channel. So as we go, our YouTube channel will grow. Everything we say, you will have available to you. You can go back and listen to, you can hear again and again and again, however many times you need to. If you have to miss a class, if you have to leave early or come back late, you have the material. We want you to watch your time, but if you have to miss, it's more important that you get the material. Does that make sense? So we have this available. So I will create our YouTube channel. What's today? Thursday? I will create our YouTube channel. And when we come back together Tuesday morning, I will give you guys that link. So we'll have the first class in, and then you'll have the link where you can access the second one, the third one, the fourth one. I think that's, again, looking back to over 3 years ago when we went on to Zoom, hands down, going on Zoom, me having the ability to record was the biggest benefit. And when I go in person again, I'm going to have to figure out how to record, because it is such a benefit for you guys. Thank you. It's such a benefit for you guys to be able to have that material for you to hear again and again. So if you miss, if there's a topic and you're going, what in the heck was that girl talking about? You got the recording. You can go back at your own pace. On the recording, you can pause me. You can rewind me. There's no doing that to me in life. So that's exciting, right? We have our own, will have our own YouTube channel. Again, I'll have that link for you guys on Tuesday. If you want the link before Tuesday of today's recording, just reach out to me. Once I get that generated, I'll be happy to send it to you. The rest I'll send on Tuesday. Or give you on Tuesday when we meet, I should say. I've mentioned the commitment required for this class. It's more involved than just being here at our time together, our class time together. There is outside study time required in order for you to grasp this information. They say that for every hour we spend in class, you should be spending 2 to 3 hours outside of class studying. It's a commitment. So if we meet 8 hours a week, they say you should be studying 16 to 24 hours outside of class. We got a couple weeks that we meet 9 hours, don't we? They say those weeks you should be, let's see, 10, it'd be 10. Yeah, 10, sorry. Those weeks you should be spending 20 to 30 hours outside of class. I need you guys to commit, not just to being here during class time, but commit to studying. And guys, I get it. I pretty much just gave you a part-time job, didn't I? There you go. Here's a part-time job. Guys, I need you. And this weekend is a great opportunity to find balance, to find the time. I'm not asking anybody to give anything up. I'm asking you to find balance. I'm asking you to make room for this stuff so you can get through your exams. All right, more question time. How many of you have family? How many of you have friends? How many of you have a job? How many of you have, I don't know, a show you're binge watching on Netflix right now? We have other things going on, yes? I'm not asking you not to do family obligations for the next 2.5 months. I'm not asking you to discontinue your Netflix subscription. What I am saying is maybe instead of binge watching the whole series, you just watch 1 or 2 episodes and then go study. You know, instead of, you know, spending every Friday night with your friends, maybe you do every other Friday night and dedicate one of those to studying. What I'm trying to tell you guys is you've got to find the time. And it's been my experience that time doesn't just magically manifest itself. It doesn't work that way, does it? So I recommend you guys schedule your study time. Put your study time in your calendar. Make that commitment to yourself. And if you break this appointment, you've broken this appointment to yourself. You're not gonna squeeze in the time that this class requires without making the effort to make it happen. So we're going to look at our class schedule in just a second. I'm going to encourage you guys to put those dates in your calendar so we know when we're together and when we're not. I also encourage you guys to put your study time in your calendar and keep that appointment, keep that commitment to yourself. Some of you are early birds. Maybe if you get up at 6, maybe you get up at like 5 instead. So you give yourself that extra hour studying. Some of you are night owls. So instead of going to bed at noon, the other way, instead of going to bed at midnight, you go to bed at 1. You guys with me? You gotta rearrange some things. You gotta rearrange some things to make room for this class. And it's a balancing act. I get it. I get it. I kind of liken it to going to a buffet and you pick up your little plate and you look down that whole line of all that good food and you stand there and wonder, how am I going to put all that food on that teeny tiny plate? You got to make it happen, right? Make it happen. So find the time. And I like starting on a Thursday actually, because this gives us time to process and think about some of these things. Because when we come together on Tuesday, we're off and running. So this gives us time to get it together. Another thing I mentioned was the importance of just listening. Just listening. Again, I know sometimes we want to write down every single word on the PowerPoint. And sometimes we want to derail ourselves. Sometimes we're sitting in class going, well, when I bought my house, that's not the way it was. You just derailed and you possibly missed that test question. So stay focused with me. Listen to what we're saying. And again, I'm recording. So you want to listen to it again, you'll have that ability to again and again and again and again. We don't really have homework in this class. We don't have any assignments. We don't have, this is independent. It's up to you. I do always encourage you guys. I always encourage you to look ahead at the material that we're going to cover next. I will let you know before we leave each class what's next. So you have the ability to look ahead. I also think you guys want to review what we covered. After class, go back and review. Was there something you didn't understand? Was there something you need to go back and watch the recording? Something you need to go back and reread or re-go through the book? So let's just go ahead and say your homework assignment for every single class is to look ahead at where we're going and review where we've been. Because this stuff adds up. You know, the things that we talk about on Unit 2, we're going to start in Unit 2 today. And the things that we talk about in Unit 2 are testable mid-November when we take our tests. So as time goes on and this information accumulates, if you don't go back and review Unit 2 by the time November rolls around, you forgot Unit 2. So it's important that you keep going back and reviewing what we've done to keep that stuff fresh. With that being said, I do have an unofficial homework assignment request. And one thing I would like from each of you is for you to text or email me an introduction of yourself. And I'd like you to include your book, because the Real Estate Commission wants me to verify that you have the book. So what a better way to do it, you introduce yourself to me with your book. I can verify your introduction. It doesn't need to be too big. You know, where are you from? What do you do now? Why are you here? What do you want? Why do you want to be a real estate agent? There's no due date on this assignment, somewhere between now and our exam. Even if I already know you, I ask that you please still send your introduction again. But this is a great opportunity for me to get to know you guys a little bit better and to verify you have the book. So it's kind of like twofold. And for those of you that went, oh no, I did not write down my phone number and email when she told me to the first time. There you go. I got you. I got you. Here's your other opportunity. Write down my name or phone number. And now you know you have a homework assignment. That's fine. So if you have an ebook, just tell me you have an ebook. So why don't you guys, let's go ahead and do a brief introduction of ourselves right now. Why don't you guys pull your chat up? Again, one of your options there in your Zoom toolbar is to chat. And let's set your chat to everyone. You should have two options. Everyone or just me? Does that sound right? Okay, good. So set your chat to everyone. And why don't you tell your peers? Let's tell your peers right now. Where are you from? What city are you sitting in right now taking this call? I said, where are you from? But where are you right now? So you got Oak Ridge, Mount Airy, Winston's, Witsit, several Mount Airies. Advance, Walnut Cove. There we go. Cornelius down around Charlotte. K Vegas. New London. Another Winston. Matthews. I think that's another Charlotte. G Borough. Oh, somebody's in the Outer Banks. Are you kidding me? That's not fair. See, that's the part about this I don't like. Why is it that you get to be in the Outer Banks and we don't? That just doesn't seem right to me. Jonesville. Good country, Charlotte, Chapel Hill, Winston, Statesville, my alma mater. I'm a Statesville High School alum. Vauquois Varna, I think that's down at the coast. Arcadia, yep. So see, this is what I like about Zoom. We are all over the place. Every once in a while, I get somebody taking this class from in a different state. So every once in a while, I get somebody from like California. I'm like, gosh, that means it's like 6 o'clock in the morning over there now. They're logging on. Not fun. But it's interesting to me. Graham says he likes the city much better when we're not down there. I understand. As a tourist, I know how we can be. That's awesome. Lenore, yep, up there. I was just out of those parts the other day, up there around the Hickory area. So that's what's interesting to me. Since we've gone on Zoom, we've expanded. I mean, we all used to be Winston and surrounding areas, but now we have. I mean, we got mountains to coast covered. So yeah, send me your homework assignment again. Please don't do it now. Wait till after class. If you do it now, consider that a distraction. Are we starting to get the feel for this no distraction thing? The only thing you're doing when we're together is this. Anything else is considered a distraction. But yeah, send me your homework assignment or your introduction. I hate to call it an assignment. Send me your introduction. I will respond. So if you want to know if I got it or not, I will respond. I may not do it immediately, but I will respond. Thank you, Dee. LaDawn's in Clayton. Very interesting. So again, you guys, we got to keep on track. We got to keep focused. So I asked that we ask the right questions. If your questions start with, what about this? Or this one time I bought a house, those aren't the right questions. The right questions are clarification questions. Can you explain this? I don't understand that. Those are the right questions. And I also, you guys, again, our time is very, very tight in this class. So in the event I can't get to each and every single one of your questions, that's why you have my number and email. That's why I want you to reach out for me. When we're together in class, this is class time as the whole. If you want to talk about something individually, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, give me a call. Fair enough? I think this is a big challenge because a lot of you guys are probably here today with your own agenda. This is what I want to learn. This is what I want to know. We're not here for your agenda. We're here for my agenda. So I want to help you achieve your agenda, but remember, my job is to help prepare you for these exams. And that's what we're doing here together. And that's our goal. I know a lot of you are rip roaring ready to go, work with buyers and sellers. I want to be a top producer. Awesome, fantastic. But don't put your cart in front of your horse. Before you can go out there and start working with buyers and sellers and being a top producer, you got to pass a state exam. Before you pass a state exam, you got to pass this end of class exam. So we got to keep this in stages and you got to keep your goals. Fair enough? So welcome officially to the wonderful world of real estate. It's an adventure every single day, and it all starts today. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, this is a career. This is a career. So I hope you're ready. What questions do I have? how many of you, has it been a minute since you took a class? Has it been a minute since you took a test? I'll put my hand up first because I'm not bashful. It's been a minute since I sat in a classroom. Now, some of you, I'm going to hear in your introduction, I just graduated high school or college. I'm going to say, oh man, those were the days, you know. But for the rest of us, it's been a minute since we've been in the classroom. So what I want to do a little bit this class and then starting into first and next week is help offer you guys some tips and tricks to help you interpret these test questions. Because knowing the material is part of it, being able to interpret the questions is another part. So part of the reason why we give you guys so much practice quizzes is to help get you in those practice of reading those questions. Let me just go ahead and put this out there. Sometimes they like to trick you. That's what you guys say. This is tricky. They're tricking us. Why? They're making sure you have a full grasp on this material. They're making sure that you have a very full understanding. And if they can trick you by throwing you off by one word, do you have a full grasp of this material? If they trick you, you don't have the grasp. So we're going to help you guys. I'm going to spend some time helping you how you can interpret and look through some of these test questions. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, with the test question and the answer choices, you need to read every single word because every single word means something. So time management, making sure that you're reading through those words in the appropriate amount of time, but also helping you identify what's known as absolute words. Absolute words are things that can help us better understand what the question is asking. There's not much wiggle room to the word all, is there? There's not much wiggle room to the word must or accept or never. These are referred to as absolute words. You'll see these in your test questions. You'll see these throughout the class. But we're helping you identify these things to help you interpret these questions. I know I said earlier my job is to prepare you for the state exam, and that is my job. Again, it's not just about providing you with the material. You have it in your hand. You have the material. But I think another part of my job is help you interpret some of these daggum test questions because they can get tricky. They can get hard. And that's why we want to make sure we're taking our time, looking at every word and going through it. So when we come together on Tuesday, we're going to look at some questions in the Unit 1 quiz. Unit 1 is very basic. Anything worth testing in Unit 1 is explained more in depth in a future unit. So Unit 1 is just introducing you to a whole array of concepts and ideas. So with that being said, the Unit 1 quiz is pretty basic, but we're going to go through some questions on Tuesday, not to get the right answer, but to talk about things that we can look for, different ways that we can answer these and interpret these questions. So if you haven't done the Unit 1 quiz yet, please do so before Tuesday so we can go through and look at that. I also think we introduced you to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission earlier. We talked about their attendance requirement. Understand the Real Estate Commission is our licensing body. They regulate our license. They issue our license. They regulate our license. If you mess up, they can discipline your license. We will talk about that as we go on. But as we start going into this class, I think it's very important that we understand why the Real Estate Commission exists. They are not here to give you a real estate license. The main purpose of the Real Estate Commission is to protect the public when they're dealing with their real estate agent. The commission is not here for brokers. The commission is here for the public. And so them issuing you a license, you have proven to them that you have the minimum competency to go work with their public. How do you prove you have the minimum competency? You pass your exams. You pass those exams, they feel that you're competent. They hand you a license, you go work with their public. They also offer further education. Pre-licensing is not the end. This is only the beginning. Once you get licensed, you have post-licensing classes. There are 3 30-hour post-licensing classes. So once you get licensed, you have 90 additional hours. We will talk about that, what that looks like and when you have to do that. The Real Estate Commission also requires us to take CE each year to help keep us updated, to know what's going on. Again, we will talk more about this. This is the only education from the Real Estate Commission, so pre-licensing, post, and CE. You're going to be encouraged once you join your firm. Your firm's going to offer training. You have a local board of realtors. There's the National Association of Realtors. Anybody ever heard of the National Association of Realtors? So there's other platforms out there for you guys to get training. Training is continuous. Training is ongoing throughout your real estate career. What the Real Estate Commission requires is pre-licensing, post-licensing, and CE. So just to kind of introduce you to a couple of these things, again, we'll spend more time talking about this, but just kind of introducing you to some of these things. Questions? Comments? So far, so good? So far, so good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our first break because I'm a good stopping place. So hang on. Don't go anywhere just yet. Let's talk about what breaks look like. I do set a timer, so that way there's no confusion as to how long a 10-minute break is. So at the end of 10 minutes, the little bell, there's an alarm. It's annoying. It's loud. If you have dogs in the house, they're gonna bark. They're gonna freak out. But at the end of 10 minutes, the alarm goes, and that's when we come back, turn our cameras back on. When we come back from break, you can turn your camera off to go to break. I'm fine with that. But when we come back from break, we turn our cameras on, and I do a screenshot for attendance, which means I take a screenshot of my screen, what I'm looking at you guys. And when I go back and look at attendance, if I don't see you sitting in front of your camera, then I can't give you credit for being there that hour. Now, listen, if you don't make it for the screenshot for attendance, if you come back late from break, tell me in a chat, I'm back. And then I will just deduct that time that you missed. But if you don't tell me, I go back and look at my attendance and I don't see you, I can't give you credit for that hour. Do we see how this works? So we're going to go to break. We're going to turn our cameras off. 10 minutes, we're going to turn our cameras back on. We take attendance. I see you. I can give you credit for the 10 o'clock hour. If I don't, I can't. So let's take our first break. Take your cameras off. Go get your coffee. Check your phones, all that good stuff. We come back. We're going to introduce you to the book. We're going to introduce you to the online learning system. And that's how that works. If you find that 10 minutes gets away from you, which I hear that a lot, Julie, your 10-minute clock is wrong. Julie, there's no way that was 10 minutes. I get it. Time gets away from us. So if you find that your 10 minutes keeps getting away from you, you may want to consider setting the timer on your phone so we can get you back. All right, so we're back and cameras are on and I can see you. So I am going to take a screenshot for attendance, and I got you guys on 2 different screens, so that means I need to do. So on your end, you may see a little flash. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you do, it's okay. So let's see. I can see Shania. And Maria told me she was back. Thank you. If you want to tell me you're back in the chat, better safe than sorry. That's fine too. I'm good with that. But I definitely need to hear from you if you don't make it for the screenshot for attendance. And I try really hard to make a big to-do out of it, so you know if you missed it or not. Just know if you're back late, you need to share that in chat with me. So what I want to do now, I want to go through a few things, make sure we're all good. First off, you guys got this email from Lane. I guess this came out yesterday. And I know you guys got this because you got my Zoom link to be here today. I want to go through and make sure that you guys saw the good stuff in this email. So we had everybody log on early today. I'm not coming on at 8:30 every class. There's no need for all that. So generally speaking, I log on about 8:45. You're welcome to log on at any time at 8:45. You don't have to turn your camera on until 9. But guys, I know sometimes Zoom requires updates and they don't update until you're trying to log on. So if you're waiting until 9 o'clock to log on and Zoom has to do a 6-minute update, you're going to be 6 minutes late. You're going to have 6 minutes missing. So I recommend you log on 8:45, 8:50, see if Zoom needs to do anything, whatever it needs to do, and you go get your coffee and we turn cameras on at 9. Let's see. Lane asked you guys to complete the registration and the contract. Click on these links and do these various things for her. If you've not done that yet, please do so. She cannot submit you as completing this class to the Real Estate Commission until you do. So please go ahead and do this, the registration and contract signatures. Make sure you look over everything. Let Lane know if you have any questions. The other thing in this email from Lane is our online learning system. So we'll introduce you to this in just a second, but this is a great platform to help you guys better wrap your brains around this material, better help you prepare for your exams. So Jane has offered a tutorial for you to get signed up, how to sign up for the online learning system. And then once you're signed up, we have the link that you need right here. Now you can save it or bookmark it, of course, but you always have this in this email. How many of you got an online learning system set up? Yay! If you've not had a chance yet, that's fine. Just please do so this weekend because there's some good stuff in here for you guys. What else is good in this? Our Zoom link. This is the same link we use to access class every single time. I recommend taking Lane's email and creating a folder off to the side, calling it like pre-licensing or something. Because if your email looks anything like mine, this email from Lane is going to get pushed down to the bottom, and then it's going to go on the second page, and then it's going to find on the third. And then one day you're late for class because you can't find the email with the Zoom link. So one way we may avoid that is create your own folder for it in your email so you can access this link easily each time. Let's see, ClassMarker. ClassMarker is the platform that we deliver your final exam. This is a tutorial for how ClassMarker works. I think somewhere between now and test day, you guys should look at this tutorial. Familiarize yourself with ClassMarker, how it's going to look. That'll take one thing away from test day. I will also tell you guys that midterm that I mentioned earlier, the midterm is also on ClassMarker. So it's going to give you some practice and some experience. So let's watch the tutorial between now and the midterm, so you know how to navigate and work through the system But that's kind of another benefit of the midterm, is to give you exposure to this class marker so you know what to expect for test day. And then Lane's email goes over some conduct, student conduct, and then she has our course dates and our times. Again, I do recommend you guys go ahead and put these dates and times in your calendar so you have them. You will note there are a handful of classes that we go until 2. So please make note of these dates and times so you'll have your schedule. So we're keeping the email from Lane. And now we have our online learning system. So this is in the email. Get yourself set up. Again, watch that little tutorial from Jane. We're not obviously going to go through much today, but just introduce you to it. So the welcome sections, here's the syllabus that I mentioned. If you want to know what's going to be covered, if you want to know what we're going to talk about, ta-da, it's all right here. This whole class is right here. Log out, log back in. Lavita, try that. That's my solution. That's my IT experience. My IT advice. Log out, log back in. Unplug it, plug it back in. That's what I know. If that doesn't work, then we got to pull in the experts. So the syllabus, let's see. I also want some Unit 1 material. You guys can go through and explore this. One thing I like about the online learning system, when you read a question, which of the following best defines, and I'm not looking at these, I'm just going to click see. Oh, and I got it right. Not only does it tell you if the answer is right or wrong, but it also tells you why. And to me, this why is the most valuable piece of the online learning system. It's the explanation. And if you guys get a question wrong, it's not just about learning, why is this right? But it's also asking yourself, spending your time with, why did I answer the way that I did? What got crossed in my mind that made me put B when the answer is C? So this is a great opportunity for you to dissect this material. And as we read these explanations, as we read the explanations to the answers, to the test questions, that's going to help you further your understanding. So to me, these quizzes, and there's one in each unit. To me, these quizzes is the most valuable piece of the online learning system. But as you can see, some units have more than others. So for example, we got some supplemental material in Unit 7. What do you guys think? Is Unit 7 more tested than Unit 1? Just from looking at this, I didn't give you any supplement in Unit 1, did I? But Unit 7, I give you all sorts of stuff. So some of the thicker, more in-depth information, we try to provide some things to help you guys better understand, better grasp the understanding. The other thing in the online learning system is we have a Julie folder. So Julie folder is things that are specific just for us, just for this class. And one thing in the Julie folder that I have is our tentative schedule. So this not only tells us the dates and the times that we're going to meet, but it also tells us about what we're going to cover when. So if you're looking ahead, if you want to know what are we going through next week, this is a tentative schedule. I'm not saying we stick to this thing to the letter, but we're close. We're very close. So this gives you an idea. And as we start looking through this, we can see I don't go in order of the textbook. After Unit 6, we go to 20, and 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then we start skipping around 14, 15, 21, etc. We don't go in order of the book. We go in order of the syllabus. The book is a supplement to the syllabus. So we're going to skip around some. And again, I'll let you know what we're going to cover before we get to each class. Also with this class, we have some Tuesdays, Thursdays that we're not meeting. So we also need to know when we're not going to meet. We don't have class on the 28th. There's a week in October that we don't have class. So by having the class dates and times in your calendar, you know when we are and are not supposed to be here. So again, I do really encourage you guys to get these dates, and especially the 2 o'clock times. Our final exam is the last day of class. It's online, it's on Class Marker. You guys will log into Zoom like you always do, and I'll give you your exam online. That's all we'll do on the 16th is take a test. We will talk more about that as we get closer. If you take the exam on the 16th and you don't pass, but you at least make a 50%, you are eligible for the retake. We do offer one free retake if you make at least a 50%. So the retake date is November 18th. Please go ahead and pencil that date in now. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't. But if you need it, I want you to have this date in your calendar set aside now. We also offer you guys a free, we like that word, don't we? A free cram course. So you may want to go ahead and put this date and time, November 10th, in your calendar. Again, we will talk more about it as we get closer. I just want to get our dates in place. So please look at our tentative schedule, get your dates. Once you get the class dates in, that'll help you get your study dates in. And then also in our Julie folder is my PowerPoint. So I threw our welcome PowerPoints in here that we just went through. So you have my phone number there again in case. And then here's our PowerPoints for the first 6 units, 1 through 6 and 20. So again, there's no need for you guys to write down every single word because you already have it. Now I understand, I get it. Some of you say, I learn by writing it down. I will learn by the power of repetition. And I think that's great. And that can be part of your study time because then you can write it over and over and over and over and over again. And you're not trying to do that, distract yourself from class. So all our PowerPoints are here. Everything is here, ready to go. It's all in that Julie folder. Yes, sir, Phil.
Sorry to interrupt. So just a question, since I'm older than most people, is it better, more efficient to use the hard copy book to study? Because you mentioned the syllabus, or is the syllabus specific things you're going to go over that I should be rereading, or both? What's the best
That's
option?
a great question, Phil. Yeah. So on the PowerPoints, we're going to learn in just a second. I got a number down here, and that's the page number that relates to the book. So we're going to think of the book as like a supplement to the syllabus. The book gives us examples and in practice and pictures, things that the syllabus doesn't get. So we connect the two together, you know, but using that syllabus as our guide. And we're going to reference, you know, where we are in the book. You know, I say this to you guys, the information on my PowerPoints alone is not enough for you to pass this exam, these exams, I should say. So we're just using the PowerPoints to reference where in the book we need to focus. We need to focus our attention. So online learning system, come in here this weekend and familiarize yourself with it. Just start clicking on stuff. What's in unit 3? What's in unit 14? Just start clicking on stuff and familiarizing yourself for it. By the way, the online learning system is also set up in the order that we go. So if you want to know what we're going to cover next, it just goes right down in order of the class. The thing I want to do, let me stop sharing just for a second. We get out of share mode for just a second. Let's see. I got a few of you. I don't know if you're and I think some of you are logged on. If you're logged on twice, can you just tell me in the chat, a private chat? I think I got some of you logged, which is fine. That's fine. Obviously, I understand with the different equipment and everything, and you need to do what you need to be here. But I just want to make sure I know who's here logged on twice. So if you'll let me know that. Another thing I want to do real quick before we get started is officially introduce you to your textbook. How many of you read the first 3 units before today? A few hands? Okay, so for the rest of you, and I know some of you just got your book like yesterday, so you haven't had a chance to take the paper off of it yet, but please get yourself caught up this weekend. We'll get unit 1, unit 2 today. Next week, we'll 2, 3, 4, get into 5. I mean, we just keep moving. So please take this opportunity this weekend to get yourself caught up in the studying and the reading material. The first couple weeks of class are, I hate to say, they're more smooth sailing. Once we get into past the first couple weeks, things start getting in depth, things start getting thick. And by that, I mean, we start getting into heavily testing material. So I'd like you guys to get in these habits to get caught up before we get a couple weeks in. So you have some time to get yourself up and running, get these habits started before we get into the big stuff, which we'll talk about. So turn with me in your books. Let's just start on page 1. Always a good place to start. On page 1, the beginning of each unit has key terms. You guys see that on page 1? Understand, you guys are coming into a new industry with a whole new vocabulary. By the time I'm done with you guys, I'm going to have you speak in broker. But to have you speak broker, I need you to know what the words mean. So very basic 101 is, what are the words? What are the key terms? After class, once we review unit 1, you can come through and ask yourself, do I know what these words mean? If not, look them up. There is a glossary in the back of your book. You may want to make note of that, glossary in the back of the book. You guys also have a phenomenal tool to help you look up things you don't know, right at your disposal. That's called Google. So if you come across a word you don't know, look it up. That's a huge step 1, you guys. Do I know what the word means? So each unit has a key term. Now fast forward to page 15. Each unit also ends with a key point review. Let's call this the Cliff's Notes or the summary. This is a summary of the unit. And we can best, this is not a supplement for the unit. This is a summary. And the best way we can use this key point review is to treat it like a checklist. Do you know what we say when we refer to land, real estate, real property? Again, use this after class. Once we cover unit 1, go to the key point review. Do I know what this stuff means? Great, I'm doing good. If not, go back and look it up and review it. And that's how you review what we've covered. You have the key point review, you have those key terms. Each unit also has on page 17 an end of unit quiz. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at some questions in unit 1 on Tuesday morning, so we can help you interpret these things, these questions. I do recommend, listen, I'm all about you guys writing in your book and highlighting and circling and doing all the things in your book that you want to do. I do recommend you don't write on the end of unit quizzes. I think you should take these on a separate piece of paper. And that way you can take the quizzes again and again and again. Because once you circle C for number 1, that never goes away. So just a recommendation, keep your quizzes clean so you can take them again and again, especially as we get near the end and we're preparing for that end of class exam. Let's skip ahead. Let's go to page 834. I'm sorry, 835. 835. $835 is kind of our math review. Yes, there is math in this class. There's not a lot of math. As a matter of fact, there's not enough math to fail you. You can miss all the math and still pass this test. So the math is not going to be what we stress out about. We're going to cover the math. We're going to spend some time in the math, because if you can get those to help you, get you a few extra points, absolutely. For those of you that are not a fan of the math, for those of you that are a little fluttery right now because I said that 4-letter M word, you may want to consider spending time starting on page 835 and familiarizing yourself. This talks about your calculator. We're going to talk on 837. We're going to talk a little bit about measurement. Makes sense in real estate. We got to understand how to measure and measurement numbers. There's fractions, decimals, and percentages on page 843. So again, if you're a little fluttery about the math, you may want to consider looking at this section. I don't want you to study it. I don't want you to spend all weekend on it, but you may want to flip through it and peruse it to refresh yourself on how to convert a rate to a decimal or how to convert a fraction to a decimal, because that's some of the things we're going to see. Good news with the math, we only do use 5 keys: add, subtract, multiply, divide, and percent.
Miss Julie, in my book, page 835 is the glossary.
Okay, so Abby, you have an outdated book. They just released a new book like 2 weeks. This is the 10th update edition.
Oh.
So a couple of you telling me in the chat. So that tells me you don't have the update. You just have the 10th edition.
Okay.
If you don't have the update, you're going to be a few page numbers off from me.
Okay.
Again, this thing just came out like 2 weeks ago. So you guys are right on the cusp, right on the transition.
Okay.
So Abby, if your math isn't on 835, let's see, my glossary is after that. So
mine's right before.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
For those, of course, and thank you. For those of you that don't have the update, my PowerPoints may be a page or 2 off, but guys, they're not like pages off. So once we get in the unit, we go in order of the unit, and you'll be able to keep up with us if you're not using that update. Phil had the same thing. Yeah, like I said, you guys are right on the cusp. I've gone through and updated my PowerPoints. I don't think page numbers really start getting off until several units in, but they do start getting off, and we just got to make sure we're staying in order. But I always got to make sure I'm going from the current book. And so the update is the current book. Thank you. Other questions on that? Okay. Well, let's see. Got to get you guys and come back and grab you guys. There you are. All right. Another thing you're going to see on my PowerPoints, every single one of my PowerPoint has a colored star. And the star relates to the level that we need to know the material. The syllabus identifies the material as level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1, tell me what the word means. Define the word. Level 2, you need to apply it in a scenario. Level 3, you should be able to teach this to somebody else. So as we start seeing the different levels on my PowerPoints, we identify those as different colored stars. So when we see a green star, when we see a green star, we know that that's just a level 1, a very basic understanding. When we see a yellow star, we know we need to be able to apply it. When we see a red star, we know we need to be able to, like I said, you need to be able to explain level 3 red star material to somebody else in a way that they can understand it. You need that good of an understanding of this red star material. So we're going to identify each topic by its level. I think one thing we're going to learn is that a lot of things that start as level 1, as the conversation continues, turn into level 2 and level 3. So we're going to build on a lot of these topics, but guys, it all starts with, do you know what the word means? If anything else, read the glossary. If you don't do anything else, read the glossary. Having I think you need to do more than that, by the way. But having that basic understanding of what the word means is a great place to start. Please always remember, you are learning a new vocabulary. You're learning a new language. We're teaching you how to speak broker. Other things we may see on my PowerPoint. So we have identified things as problem topics. Things that are identified as problem topics are things that the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has said licensing candidates have struggled with, had problems with. So we help you identify those problem topics so you make sure you have an understanding of those. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have Your state exam is two sections, the national section and the state section. So anytime we get into a state-specific topic, you're going to see our great state flag. And that'll help you identify what things are particular to North Carolina, a state-specific section, versus things that may be on the national. By the way, everybody, please understand, we're here for a North Carolina real estate license. I do not know about licensing in other states. I don't. Our focus is North Carolina. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, Miss Julie, I had a question. You mentioned earlier about how some units are more like test specific.
Yes.
Which,
Yes, I saw that, Graham. I'm sorry, I got away from me.
no, that's
So
okay.
we're gonna talk about the more heavily tested units as we go. I'll tell you guys right now, the most heavily tested units are 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay.
Now, that's not all we're going to study. That's not all of your test.
I've taken this class before, and those were the subjects that I really struggled with. So
that
makes
makes
sense.
sense, doesn't it? Graham, I appreciate you saying that, because this is a lot of information, isn't this? And it's a lot to take in.
it's,
So
it's a
thank you for
difficult
coming
class.
back.
So
You're not
everyone
alone.
study.
You're
It's
not
really
alone.
important.
It's tough. And Aubrey, thank you. So some of you may be a retake. I just ask that you please not fall into what I refer to as the retake trap. The retake trap is when you guys sit there and convince yourself that you don't have to study because you already know this stuff. Can I just say it? If you knew it, you wouldn't be retaking it, right? I mean, let's just put it out there. I know you know it. We just got to get it out there on the test. Does that make sense? So thank you guys for sharing that. Please, y'all, don't fall into the retake trap if that's you. And thank you, Graham. So yeah, 7 and 8 are all about agency, creating agency and working as an agent. 9 and 10 are all about contracts. So when we think about acting as a real estate agent, we're thinking about running around working with buyers and sellers as an agent. And we're talking about writing them up sales contracts. So it makes sense that those topics are our 4 heavily tested units. But with that being said, anything else? All right. Well, shoot, let's just do it, huh? Unit 1. Unit 1, y'all ever heard you gotta stretch before you run a marathon? So unit 1 is our stretch. We get a quick hour stretch. The rest of the class is our marathon. So unit 1 is just introducing us to a lot of the basics. Again, you guys, if there's anything testable in unit 1, we're going to see it in future units. So when it comes to crunch time cram studying at the end, when we're trying to put it all together, don't worry about unit 1. We're going to focus on the rest of the stuff. So with unit 1, I like to start us off with kind of like for each unit, a guide, a roadmap of some of the more important topics we can expect to see in the unit. So our roadmap for unit 1, we're going to talk about land, real estate, real property, and personal property, and what makes all these different. We're going to talk about some physical and economic characteristics of real property once we define what real property is. There's pluses and minuses to everything, yes? And that includes purchasing real estate. Real estate is an investment, whether you be an investor and you do this for a living, or even if you buy or own your own home, you have an investment. So we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses. And then we're going to talk about supply and demand and how it relates to real estate, what that looks like in our terms. So we're going to start. You can see at the top right, we have our green star telling us that this is level 1 material. And then at the bottom, I have a 2. Can you guys see that? Okay, all right. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I don't pretend like I understand Zoom. So good, we can see it. That number at the bottom right tells us what page we're on. So let me go back for 1 second. I can't believe I forgot to say this. I talked about your shopping list earlier. You already got calculator on your shopping list, right? You may want to consider putting highlighters on your shopping list as well. Because if you have a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, and a pink or an orange highlighter, you can use that to help coordinate in your book the levels of topic. So we're going to go get a calculator and we're going to get some highlighters so it can help better direct us in the book so we know where to focus our energy. So green star, very basic understanding of the difference in real property and personal property. We're going to get more in depth. We're going to talk more about both of these as we get into Unit 2. But just to understand the basics, real property is land and everything that's permanently attached to the land naturally. So real property is your land and everything permanently attached to it, your trees, your lakes, your ponds. Personal property then is everything that's not real property. If you can pick it up and move it, it's considered personal property. Now we're going to talk about fixtures in Unit 2 and better understand how we can identify real property and personal property. So let me ask you guys this. There's a myth out there on the streets. I wonder if you've heard this myth, and if you've had, I want to go ahead and debunk it. Has anybody ever heard the myth that nothing you learn in pre-licensing you're going to use in your real estate career? Has anybody heard that one yet? Nothing you learn, you're going to, I see head shaking no, thank you. I see some shaking yes. I actually like the one shaking no, because maybe that myth is dying. For those of you that have heard the myth, let me ask you this. You're out showing property this weekend, you're working with buyers, and your buyer wants to know, if I buy this house, what conveys, what transfers over with it when I purchase? Real property, for the most part, conveys. Personal property is the seller's personal belongings that they're going to pick up and take with them. So here we are, day one, slide one. Do we need to understand the difference between real property and personal property? Because our buyers are going to look at that and say, does that stay? Does that go? Do I get this? Is that included? So are you going to use some things you learn in pre-licensing? Yeah, here it is, slide one. Are you going to use every single thing you learn in pre-licensing in the real world? No, you're not. I'm telling you that right now. Some things you will never see again once you get through these tests. Some things you will never have to deal with again once you get through these tests. But remember our goals, you guys. You're not dealing with any of it if you don't get through the tests. Okay, so real property versus personal property. We'll revisit this in Unit 2. Let's talk about land, real estate, and real property. So land is defined as the surface, everything above the surface to infinity, and everything below the surface to the center of the earth. We will talk about air rights. We will talk about subsurface rights. But right now, just to define land, we're looking at the surface, anything attached to it naturally, everything above it, and everything below it. When you add a man-made structure to land, you have real estate. So once you add a house or a building or a fence or a shed, once man comes in and does something, now we have real estate. And then when you take the real estate with the idea of ownership, the idea of ownership says you don't just own the real estate, but you also own rights. As an owner of real estate, you have rights. And when we add those rights to our real estate, now we're looking at real property. We'll also talk about your bundle of legal rights in Unit 2. But the idea of owning real property is not just the physical structure, not just the land, but it's the benefits that come with home ownership, your bundle of rights. Then we introduce you to some characteristics of real estate or real property. There are physical characteristics Real property is immobile, which means it is where it is. You can't pick land up and move it. With immobility, I always think when you guys go to Google Maps and you put in an address and it gives you that little red flag and it says, this is it, this is where it is. That address isn't going to change. That where it's pointing to, it's immobile. Land is indestructible. Structures come and go. Buildings are built, torn down, rebuilt every day, everywhere. But the land remains. The land is indestructible. And then land is also unique. Real property is unique. There are no two parcels of land that are exactly the same. Even side by side, they may be awfully similar, but there are no two parcels of land that are exactly the same. They are unique. The economic characteristics of real property, we can remember this by remembering the mnemonic slip. Land is scarce. There's only so much land to go around. Have you guys ever heard that property, land on water tends to be more expensive? It tends to be have more value. There's only so much we can build up and down the coast. There's only so much land we have around Belews Lake or Lake Jordan. Land is scarce. What's that old saying? Buy land, they're not making any more of it. Land is very scarce. Another economic characteristic of real property. I know we all know this one. What are the 3 most important things about real estate? Y'all want to rattle them off with me? You ready? 3 most important things of real estate. Location, location, location. Have we heard that before? It couldn't be more true. Location helps us determine the value. Location helps us determine areas that are growing, areas of preference. That's our situs, areas of preference. Improvements to the land. We tend to think of the house, the structure, which absolutely that's an improvement. But what about the plumbing? What about the electrical? What about Google fiber optics? What about all the sidewalks and street lights and fences and sheds and all the improvements to the land? That helps define our economic characteristics. And then permanence of an investment. Real estate, real property tends to be long-term investment. When we build a house, we want it to be there for a long time. So permanence, having this long-term investment. Typically speaking, once a structure is built on the land, it's kind of permanent. It's kind of hard to move. It can be done. We've seen it, but it's kind of permanent. With land, we also talk about the use. One word we're going to hear, an appraiser's term. The appraisers talk about highest and best use. We got a whole unit dedicated to the appraiser. So unit 17 will actually get to put on an appraiser's hat. And we're going to learn about something called highest and best use. Each piece of land has its own highest and best use. And what we're saying by that is, what is its most profitable use? Maybe that's how the land's being used, maybe it's not. But there is only one identifiable highest and best use. The appraiser will use that when they're determining value. And understand too that highest and best use can and does change. So think about, for example, your favorite retail center. My Winston-Salem people, I tend to think of Thruway Shopping Center. Thruway Shopping Center has not been there since the beginning of time, has it? Once upon a time ago, Thruway Shopping Center wasn't there. I don't know the history, but I wouldn't be surprised if once upon a time ago, Thruway Shopping Center was a cornfield. The highest and best use of that land at that time could have been agricultural. But as downtown Winston-Salem started to grow and they added Business 40 that later turned to Salem Parkway, infrastructure, they added Stratford Road, they had a need to expand. They had a need to change that land from agricultural into retail. Today, it's highest and best use. is retail, because that's where it's the most profitable. That's how it makes the most money. Now, technically speaking, I could buy, if I had money, I could buy through a shopping center, level it, and plant corn because it's my land and I can do what I want to with it, right? For the most part. But that wouldn't be its highest and best use. I wouldn't be maximizing the best use of the land. So unit 17 on appraisers. We're also going to talk about how we're controlled on how we can use our land. So in unit 6, we're going to talk about zoning. Also in unit 6, we're going to talk about restrictive covenants. If you're in an HOA, for example, or a subdivision, you may have covenants, rules and guidelines. Those are controls. Those are restrictions on how you can and cannot use the land. So we'll talk about those. And then when we talk about real estate as an investment, again, there's pluses and minuses to everything. So what are some advantages to buying real estate? Well, there's a good rate of return if you can hang on to it long enough. Real estate was never meant to be a short-term investment. If you want to build equity, if you want to get money out of the property, we typically need to have own it for longer to get a good rate of return. We can watch the real estate market, the values, as we're watching the economy. Real estate tends to keep up with what's going on in the economy. Things in real estate have been crazy the last couple of years. Has anybody tried to buy a house in the last 3 years? Let me rephrase that. Was anybody successfully willing to able to buy a house in the last 3 to 4 years? Were you multiple offer situation? Were you competing against 30 some other buyers, in some cases 40? Y'all, my team had a listing. We got 45 offers on it in one weekend. That's absurd. That's the kind of market that we're coming out of. We're still in a very strong seller's market. But what have we been seeing in this strong seller's market with value? What do you think? Are values going up or are values going down? What do you think? Thumbs up for down or thumbs up for up, thumbs down for down? What do you think? What do you think? Values going? Yeah, this market is driving that value. Again, if you've bought a house in the last couple of years, did you pay more for it than you thought you would have in another market? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And that's where I think having an understanding of real estate being a market fluctuates, a market has highs and lows, and we see it tend to keep pace with the economy, inflation. Another investment, as a homeowner, you may have some possible tax advantages. When you're working with a first-time home buyer, when you're working with somebody that hasn't owned in a while, you may want to encourage them to talk to an accountant. One thing we're going to learn in this class, one thing I'm going to teach you guys in this class, is to make sure you stay in your lane. Understand, we are signing up to be real estate agents. That doesn't give me a golden ticket to offer accounting advice and legal advice. This is why we have accountants and attorneys. We need to let them do their job. We're going to do our job. We're going to let them do their job. So unless you're a CPA or you're an accountant that is current on the current tax codes, we don't need to be giving the information about the possible tax advantages. Sometimes the best thing we can do for our buyers and sellers is help point them in the right direction of who they can talk to get that information. So never feel like you have to or expected to go outside of your lane. We're just here to be real estate agents. We're not here to be attorneys. We're not here to be accountants. We're just here to be real estate agents. Some disadvantages of real estate as an investment. Real estate isn't liquid. Who can tell me what I mean when we say liquidity, when we say it's not liquid?
It's not a fixed market.
It said easily turn to cash.
Okay, easily turn. Trying to hear everybody, sorry. Lavita, did you say?
I said, would that be the cash and stocks?
That's right. That's right. So if something is not liquid, that means it can't easily be converted to cash. If I need money today, I'm not getting it from selling my house. If I'm going to get money from selling my house, it's going to happen. I got to list it. I got to put it on the market. I got to find a buyer. I got to have that buyer go under contract and go through their process, right? We got to go to closing. I mean, if I need money from my house, I'm not going to get it today. If I need money today, my liquid assets or my savings account, my stocks and bonds, those kind of things that I can convert to cash today. And that's why real estate's not liquid, because it takes time. It takes time to sell it, the process. Real estate can also get expensive, owning real estate, because as I just mentioned, your real estate agent can't give you legal advice. All your real estate agent can tell you is to call your attorney. Attorneys cost money, don't they? Attorneys cost more money than the real estate agent. I can't tell you your tax advice, your accounting advice, but I can advise you to talk to an accountant, which again, could get expensive. Another disadvantage, there's work involved to grow your money. If you own property, you know, you got to do maintenance. You got to do routine maintenance. If you own a house, you're going to have to put a roof on it every once in a while. You're going to have to paint it, change the flooring, carpet, whatever. So there's work involved. You can't own property for 30 years, not pick up a hammer in 30 years, and then expect to sell it at a profit. We got to grow. We got to work to take care of that investment. And then with real estate, there's a high degree of risk. As that market changes, as we switch from a seller's market to a buyer's market, we will come into a place where it's hard to sell. We're coming from a place that it's hard to buy, but we'll get to a place where it's hard to sell. So you have a higher degree of risk. When you want to sell, what the market looks like when you want to sell may be risky. I tend to think of the real estate market on a pendulum, and that pendulum is constantly swinging. One side, we're on a buyer's market. On the other side, we're on a seller's market. And that pendulum is constantly going back and forth. A couple years ago, we were way up here, hardcore seller's market. Today, we're seeing that pendulum come down. We're still in a seller's market. We are. We're seeing it come down. And one day in the future, I don't know when, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, I have no idea. But one day in the future, that pendulum is going to be up here, and it's going to be hard to sell because we're going to be in a buyer's market. So there's risks involved with owning, with buying, with owning, and with selling. When we talk about the scope of the real estate business, there's several different avenues, if you will. There's a lot involved in the real estate transaction, and just in real estate in general, I should say. Brokerage is why we're here. This is what this class is about brokeraging a transaction. We are bringing people together in a real estate transaction. Maybe you're bringing buyers and sellers together. Maybe you're bringing landlords and tenants together, but we are brokeraging the deal. Another scope is the appraiser, the appraisal process. The appraiser helps the lender determine value, so the lender knows how to originate a loan. Our appraisal unit is unit 17, so we get to wear an appraiser's hat. Another scope is property management. Anybody thinking about going into property management, or have any future PMs, or some already working with some, a handful of you? Good, good. So property management is another scope. You've been hired to manage a property on behalf of somebody else. Property management is in unit 12. So we've got a whole unit dedicated. Another scope is financing. I need money to buy a house. Yes, I need money. So who do we do? Well, not unless you got a mattress stuffed to cash somewhere. We're going to have to talk to a lender. We're going to have to get some help. We're going to have to get some financing. So that's an avenue of it. Actually got 2 units on financing. So 14 and 15 are financing units. We're going to wear a lender's hat. Property development are builders, developers. They buy land and prepare it, build on it. We're going to talk a little bit about the development process, specifically how it relates to North Carolina. Counseling, we're always offering advice, helping our buyers and sellers get through the transaction while making an educated decision. And the only way you can make an educated decision is if is if you're informed, if you have the information. One of my big roles as a real estate agent, I'm a fact finder. I provide the information for them to make an informed decision. And I can counsel them, I can offer my advice. But bottom line, you guys, I'm not the one buying this house. I'm not the one selling this house. I don't get to make the decisions. I provide the information for them to make an informed decision. Another scope is education. You guys are here. Day one of pre-licensing, we talked about post-licensing, continuing education. We'll talk more about each of those. The Real Estate Commission also works to educate the public. So we're going to visit in a few weeks. We're going to visit the Real Estate Commission's website. It's a plethora of information, good tools, good knowledge to help educate the public through the process. And then there's some other areas too. So maybe some zoning boards, some local zoning boards, government, different governmental offices, various things. So we'll talk about zoning in 6. The other scope we want to talk about is your professional organizations. So I mentioned the National Association of Realtors a few minutes ago. Once you get your license, you affiliate with a firm. When you affiliate with your firm may require you to join the National Association of Realtors. If you join NAR, when you join NAR, that's when you get to rock that capital R, that Realtor R. You guys know what I'm talking about? I think the public recognizes that capital R. It's a different level of membership. They offer benefits, of course, various things. The public recognizes the Realtor, so there are perks to that. Once you're in NAR, once you're a member of NAR, then you now also have access. We have a state level. So there's the North Carolina Association of Realtors. We're going to talk a little bit about the North Carolina Association of Realtors. For example, they provide us all the forms that we're allowed to use in a transaction. Any of our agency agreements and sales contracts all comes through the North Carolina Association level, Association of Realtors. And then bring it down further, and you have a local level. So, for example, we have the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors and the Greensboro Board of Realtors and the High Point Board of Realtors and Triangle Board of Realtors and Charlotte's is Canopy, I think. And there are a local board of realtors all over the state. Again, affiliation with your firm will get you into these professional organizations that offer tools, training, various things to assist their members. You'll get more on this once you get your license and affiliate with your firm. But I do think it's good for us to start understanding some of these things that we're getting ready to get into. And that's what they're talking to us about on page 10. I always got to pause because I always got to make sure I say this right. When we're talking about being a realtor, you're a realtor because you're a member of the National Association of Realtors. You cannot become a realtor until you get licensed. And it's not required. Again, your firm may require it, but it's not a licensing requirement. So if I make sure I say this right, all realtors are brokers, but not all brokers are realtors. Do I have to say that again? I always got to think. All realtors, if you're a realtor, you're a broker. But just because you become a broker does not automatically make you a realtor. It's an additional level. It's an additional thing that you can't do until you get your license. So again, remember those goals. Before you can become a realtor, you got to affiliate with a firm. Before you affiliate with a firm, you got to get your license. Before you get your license, you pass state exam. Before you pass state exam, you pass this class. Keep those goals in mind. Questions on the scope? There's a lot. There's a lot of avenues. There's a lot of different hats you guys can wear in this industry. And we're going to wear several of those hats in this class. Again, introducing you to several of the basic concepts of the hats. But just know, once you get your license, you have lots of avenues. You have lots of opportunities to explore and find what hat is the best hat for you to wear in real estate. So we're going to learn a lot about a lot of things, the process, who all is involved, what it takes. I mean, it takes a village to close on a house. So we're going to talk about who's our village and who all is there to help make these gears go round. Questions? Okay. So let's go ahead and take our next break. So set your timer if you lost track. Set your timer for 10 minutes. I will come back at 10. We're really close to wrapping up Unit 1, and then we're going to get started in Unit 2. that alarm annoying? Kind of like your morning alarm, right? Right? We needed to get us going. Your dog's going nuts. I've heard from you guys that they do. Yeah. So they'll get used to it by the time they're done. Just be another noise. So we're back. Cameras are on. Is cameras coming back on? I had a really important question come in during break, and I apologize I didn't bring it up, but super important. What is our rule for eating during class? Eat away. Just don't let us no seafood, right? We don't want to see what you're eating. But yeah, I'm fine if you guys want to eat during class. If we were in person, this would be a different conversation. But since we're not, we're muted. Lunch is in an hour or 50 minutes. So please feel free to snack, eat, whatever. So we're back and cameras are on. And I'm going to take attendance. So again, on your end, you may see a little flash. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It just depends on your device. We only have a few more things left to say in Unit 1, and then we're going to wrap that up, and we're done stretching, and we're ready to run a marathon. The uses of real property. Real property can be used several different ways. So it can have residential use. Residential is referring to our housing, so the dwelling. Commercial use is our business. Maybe it's a commercial office park, for example. Maybe it's retail, restaurants. Industrial is your warehouses and factories, manufacturing plants, etc. Agricultural is your farmlands. And then you have special purpose uses. So think of like schools, churches, hospitals, etc. When we get into zoning in Unit 6, we're going to talk about how the city, the town, county, municipality sets their zoning that determines how we can use the property. And also understand too that each use has sub classifications. So for example, you may have multi-family residential or single family residential. You may also see mixed uses. So you might have areas that are allowed for residential and commercial. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in Unit 6. And then really the last thing in Unit 1 is talk about supply and demand and how it relates to real estate. Now, Economics 101 says when demand goes up, supply goes down. When supply goes up, demand goes down. Economics 101. The median point, the halfway that you're looking at is your equilibrium. As I mentioned earlier, real estate is a market, and any market is constantly fluctuating, constantly changing. So various things that affect our market, labor forces, construction costs. You guys will remember after the pandemic, we ran into supply shortages, didn't we? Everything was running out of supplies. Labor shortages was a thing. So that was a supply, a thing that affected supply in real estate as well. Something else that can affect supply or government controls, if they change zoning, for example, or if they increase taxes. We're going to talk about taxes in Unit 3, property taxes. Things that can affect demand, population. Populations grow, populations decline. A growing population is going to have a higher demand than a declining population. Various things can affect the population as well. My Kernersville people, I saw a couple K Vegas people on the call. My Kernersville people, do you remember, I don't remember how long now it's been, 8 years, 12 years, I don't know, time gets away from me. Do my Kernersville people remember when Caterpillar announced that they were going to build a manufacturing plant in Kernersville? And maybe you're not from Kernersville, but anywhere that a big manufacturing plant says, hey, we're coming to your town and building a plant. What do you think happens to the demand of housing in Kernersville when Caterpillar says we're going to build a plant? Do you think demand went up or demand went down? Oh yeah, demand went up, didn't it? Because they created jobs and people have to work those jobs and those people have to have somewhere to live. Flip that coin. My K Vegas people remember what happens. Remember when Dell announced that they were closing their doors. What do you think happened to the demand in Kernersville as a result in that? It kind of went the other way, didn't it? So population, various things that affect population will affect demand. Demographics, our family dynamics are changing. We now have different dynamics under one roof. You may have two families under one roof. Maybe the adult child, the adult kid, I guess, moves back home with mom and dad. We're seeing mom and dad move in with the adult kid, right? So we're just seeing different dynamics under the roof, multifamily. We're living longer than we ever had before, which means we got to have housing for longer. So those various demographics affect demand. And then, as mentioned earlier, employment and wage levels. So let's understand this about supply and demand and how it relates to real estate. Guys, real estate agents don't sit around and talk about supply and demand. What we sit around and talk about is a seller's market and a buyer's market. And that's our connection to supply and demand. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently in a seller's market, still very strong seller's market, not as strong, but still strong. Because we're in a seller's market, what we're telling you is that supply is low and demand is high. I got more buyers out there wanting to buy than I got a product to sell. So with a seller's market, supply is low, demand is high. What do you think happens when we switch back to a buyer's market? Yeah, the pendulum switches, but the supply and demand scale switches as well. So when we get back to a buyer's market, now we're looking at high supply. We got a lot of product, but we have low demand. So supply and demand help us identify if we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, and that's how it relates to real estate. And again, understanding, it's so important that we understand that it's a market and it's going to fluctuate. It's going to change. I've been fortunate. I mentioned earlier, I've been around for 22 years. So I was here during the housing market crash. It's that bad. It sounds as bad as what it sounds. We're going to talk a little bit about that housing market crash and that history. But that was an extreme example of a buyer's market. That pendulum swung back into the seller's market that we're coming out of right now. Who knows what the next market's going to look like? There's experts out there that will tell you their opinion. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But as far as I know, nobody has a crystal ball, do they? So we just kind of go with it and try to predict, watch trends, study various trends in the market to help us predict what to expect, so we know how to keep going forward. And that gets us through Unit 1. So at the end of each unit, I remind you about those key terms. Again, it all comes back to, what does the word mean? If you don't know what the word means, please look it up. There's a glossary in the back of your book. You have it defined within the unit. And then you also have Google. That key point review, that summary, that checklist that we talked about is on page 15. And then your student quiz. Again, we'll go over some questions from the student quiz, not looking for the right or wrong answer, but just to help identify things to help you interpret these questions, especially as they start getting much more trickier, much more longer, much more difficult to navigate and interpret. What questions do I have, from Unit 1? We have officially stretched. We're good? All right, here we go. Rocking and rolling. Unit 2. Tell me again, how many of you got a chance to look at Unit 2 before today? There's some weird stuff in Unit 2, isn't there? So hopefully, if you had the opportunity to look at Unit 2 before today, you might have come across some weird stuff. By exposing yourself to it before class, it helps you better understand it when we talk about it in class. So why I want you guys to look ahead, to read ahead, is so you have that first exposure. Let's see. So let me. So unit 2, we're going to talk about some property ownership and interests. Specifically, we're going to talk more about real property and personal property. We're going to talk about fixtures and better how we can identify what's real property and personal property to help our buyers and sellers. We're going to define an estate, and we're going to talk about the different types of estates. We're also going to explain the different forms of ownership. There are several different opportunities that people have to own property. And then we're going to talk about some of the different forms of common interest communities. An example of a common interest community is a condominium or a townhome. So we're going to talk about some of those specifics. We will not get through unit 2 today, but we will get as far as we can, knowing where we're going to pick up on Tuesday. So again, if you haven't looked at the first 3 units yet, blow through unit 1 really fast. Look at those test questions so we can talk about some of them on Tuesday. You got time this weekend to get yourself caught up with unit 2 and get started on unit 3. And before we leave today, I'll talk about what we're going to cover next week. So first thing in unit 2, we're going to do a refresher the whole way back from unit 1. And we learned about land, real property, and real estate and real property. So we said that, I'll have to get that one on break. Yep. So we said that land is everything permanently attached to it, the air rights and the subsurface rights below it, which we will talk about subsurface, below rights, and air rights. Once man adds a structure, once a physical improvement is added, then we have real estate. And then once we consider the homeowner's legal bundle of rights, now we have real property. So let's talk first about these legal bundle of rights. The legal bundle of rights, this is an old story. Your book tells you the little story if you're interested in seeing it. But once upon a time ago, many, many years ago, a lot of people, a big part of the population, couldn't read or write. And that includes signing their name to buy a house. Now, not being able to read or write doesn't negate you from being able to buy a house. You can still purchase a home. And back in the day when a lot of us couldn't read or write or sign our name, we were buying houses just by putting an X on the piece of paper, and that indicated our signature. Well, people that can't read, you can't hand them a bunch of documents and say, here are your rights, know your rights. So instead, how this idea got started was they would go to the land and they would grab some twigs and they would bundle them and hand them to this homeowner and say, these twigs from your land, from your property, represent your bundle of legal rights. And each twig has a purpose. And one way that we can remember each twig is by remembering deep sea. So the D in deep sea is your disposition twig. The disposition twig says that you have the right to transfer your property. You have the right to dispose of it as you wish. Do you want to sell it? Do you want to gift it? That's your right with your disposition twig. The first E is our enjoyment twig. The enjoyment twig says you have the right as the owner. You have the right to use the property in any legal manner that you want. We can't break zoning violations. We can't violate restrictive covenants. But the enjoyment twig says you have the right to use your property in any legal manner that you want without interference from others. Nobody can come on your land and tell you what you can and can't do as long as you're within the confines of the law. So as the owner of record, you don't have to defend yourself. You can enjoy it. You have a twig for that. The other E twig is our exclusion twig. We can exclude who we do and do not want to come onto our land. I could put a no trespassing sign up and exclude all of you from coming on my land. The P twig is our possession twig. That's the opposite of exclusion. If the exclusion twig tells me I have the right to say who can't come on my land, The possession twig tells me I have the right to say who can come on my land, who has the right to possess it. And then the C twig is our control twig. We have the right to the property. We could profit from the property if we wanted to. You want to put a tenant in place? You want to grow an orchard? We have the right to profit. That's our control twig. I think it's important that we understand that while our bundle of legal rights are bundled, it's important that we understand that they can also be unbundled. If you allow a tenant to live on your property, you are giving that tenant some of your twigs. You are giving over some of that control. You are giving over, you no longer have the right to say who can and can't come on the property, exclusion and possession. That's a twig that your tenant now holds. So our bundle of legal rights is bundled until we unbundle it. So that's the idea of real property. The rights of ownership plus the structure, man-made structure plus the land. And that's what we're working with, you guys, is real property. Helping buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants deal with those activities. Questions so far? I'm pausing on purpose. You guys ready for your first big real estate word? Day one, I'm just throwing you in the deep end of the pool. Everybody ready? Your first big real estate word. Appurtenances. If something is appurtenant, it means it runs with the land, which means it conveys from one owner to the next, to the next, to the next. Your bundle of rights, your rights or privileges, those are appurtenances. We're going to talk about your subsurface rights, your air rights, your water rights. Those are appurtenant. They run with the land. If you're in an HOA and you have restrictive covenants, those covenants are appurtenant. The very first homeowner in that subdivision follows the covenants. The second one, the third one, the 500th one, it's appurtenant. It runs with the land. For your exam, that's one way to get y'all's attention. For your exam, the Real Estate Commission says that we need to consider improvements as appurtenant. So the structure, the fence, the sidewalk, the street lighting, those things are appurtenant, which means they're going to convey. And when we say convey, we mean transferred from the seller to the buyer. They're going to convey, they're going to run with the land. Just kind of formalities. There is a difference if we talked about improved land versus an improved lot. An improved land has a structure. If you see land with a house on it, it has water, it has electricity, it has phone or internet, it has those services. An improved lot means we have those basic services. It's plumbed, it's got electricity, it's ready to go. We just haven't put a structure on it yet. So improved land has a structure, improved lot has electricity. Bare land or unimproved land would just be dirt, no electricity, nothing. We haven't touched it yet. And remember, you guys, what we said for your exam, improvements are appurtenant, which means they run with the land. So we've mentioned some of your rights that are pertinent, some of your rights with homeownership. One of those rights that we've mentioned are your subsurface rights. These are rights to any of the materials under the ground. So minerals and oils and gases. Your subsurface rights can be severed, which means somebody can come in and purchase the right or lease the right to your subsurface materials, to your minerals, your oils, your gases. Now this gets legally complicated really fast. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, you get to get an attorney involved, or your buyers and sellers get to get an attorney involved. When we start talking more specifically about working with buyers and sellers in units 7 and 8, we're going to talk about some seller disclosures. And one of the seller disclosures is addressing the subsurface rights. The seller has to disclose to the buyer if they have severed the subsurface rights or if they intend to sever the subsurface rights. But right now, we're just understanding that they can be severed. They could be bought or purchased. They're not buying your land. They're buying the rights to the minerals and oils and gases. Another right that we have are our air rights. Real property says we own the air above us up into the infinity. However, air rights can also be severed. Anybody live near or around an airport? Some of you, are you able to go out there and tell those pilots not to fly that plane over your house because it's your house and you have those rights? Yeah, no, you can't do that, can you? Because those rights have been severed. If you live, what you're looking here is PTI in Greensboro. If you live near PTI Airport, you probably have planes coming in and out in all different directions. You can't stop it because those rights have been severed. Now, it happened in a court of law between PTI and the judge. They didn't ask you. They didn't come and knock on your door and ask their permission, did they? They just started flying planes over your house one day, or they were flying planes and then you built your house. But it was severed under the courts, by the courts, which means PTI has the right to fly their plane over your house through your air. And there's nothing you can do to stop them. The other set of water or rights we have are our water rights. And these are referring to bodies of water that are, or properties that are adjacent to a body of water. So maybe we're down at the coast, maybe we're on a lake or a river, a pond. Water rights are our rights, first off, that cannot be severed. Somebody cannot come and purchase the rights to use the water that your land is adjacent to. And with water rights, we have two types of water rights. The first type of water rights is riparian. And these rights are for properties that are adjacent to a body of water without a tide. Riparian equals no tide. So the bodies of water that we're referring to with riparian rights are your lakes, your ponds, your streams, your creeks, your rivers. No tide. Some students find it helpful to see the word or the start of the word river, riparian, river, and that can help us know that that's a non-tide. And to make things fun, there are two types of riparian rights, depending on what type of body of water you live on. If you live on a non-navigable body of water, non-navigable will be in a creek or a stream. I cannot get a vessel down it. A non-navigable body of water says that the homeowners own to the center of the stream or the creek. So we take lot A, we take lot B, we draw a line down the center, and these are your property rights. This is where your line ends, is smack dab in the center of the street. Let's see, I see it. Yes, Seth.
Yeah, I got a question. This might be stupid, but
No.
I know that firefighters can go on your land and take water if they need it. Would that count as being severed or no?
That wouldn't be severed. That may be more of an easement. Like we're giving them, we're not giving them, but they have permission to do that. So they wouldn't be, that's a great question, Seth. So they wouldn't be severed, but they have permission. And we're
Okay.
going to get into those easements when we get to unit 3. So we'll talk more about what those mean. But that was a good question.
Thank you.
So riparian rights, non-navigable to the center. The other riparian right we have are navigable bodies of water. So now you have a bigger body of water. You have a river that you can get a vessel down, maybe a lake, for example. Owners that own on a navigable body of water own to the water edge. You don't own the water. Somebody else owns the water. Who owns the water? I don't know. The government, the HOA. It depends on what body of water we're talking about. The state. You may come across a body of water that allows homeowners to put a dock in. That is special permission from that body of water to put your dock in their water. You don't own the water you're putting your dock in. You're only putting your dock in because they allow you to. And guys, your test isn't going to ask you about specific bodies of water. What your test is going to address specifically is non-navigable riparian rights. So can you put a dock in a body of water? Well, the answer to that is, it depends. It depends on who owns this body of water will let you or not. What we're going to be tested on is riparian rights that tells us our rights, our line is here at the water's edge. So if riparian is bodies of water without a tide, then the other water rights we have are littoral rights. And these are bodies of water with a tide. So now we're down at the coast. This is our ocean, our sounds. With littoral rights say that the owner owns to the average high tide line. Whatever the average high tide line is where your ownership ends. The strip of land between high tide and low tide is owned by the state of North Carolina. Those are mostly our public beaches. It's the state of North Carolina that allows us access on our public beaches. From low tide out is owned by the government until we get to international waterways. So for homeowners that are on littoral rights, they own to the average high tide. And again, you may find areas where they have access to go out further. There's always the what ifs and the what abouts. What we need to know about littoral rights, the owner owns to the average high tide mark. Questions on our rights, subsurface, air, or water?
I think I just want to get clarity on when you were speaking about the riparian, and you said that the owner could build a dock. That doesn't mean that if I had a boat, like because the water's out this far isn't theirs, that doesn't mean if I'm just a random person with a boat, I can't park on that dock. Do they own the dock, even though it's in water?
Yes. Your dock is in their water. So just because you see a dock, you're right, Travis, doesn't mean you can go dock your boat there, because that's somebody else's dock.
So it is their dock. Okay.
Yeah. It's your dock in their water. Yep.
Okay.
They allow you to put that dock there. And kind of, Travis, to your point, what if you want to, have a boat in the water? You don't need a dock, right? You can just step right on from the shore into the boat. Can you have a boat in the water? And again, the answer is it depends. It depends, because they're going to have, like I said, Belews Creek and Lake Jordan and Lake Norman. I mean, how many big lakes do we have across the state? So they all have their rules and regulations.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Julie, I had a question on the
Yes.
On severing of subservice. What's a situation where that right is that can be severed? Either I didn't hear you, or I didn't really understand that, honestly.
Sure. So, for example, what's Texas have? A lot more of than what we have here. What's Texas got? Oil, right? So if you sever your subsurface rights, when you strike oil, what you gonna get? Nothing, because you don't own that oil, somebody else. So when you go out and you're digging in your backyard and lo and behold, you strike oil, maybe they'll give you a little something for finding it, but it's not yours. Does that make sense? It's somebody else has that right to take that oil, do what they do with it, refine it, and sell it. Let's bring it closer to home, especially Graham. You get further down east. You know what we're starting to see in North Carolina that's going to come up a lot more with subsurface rights, severing subsurface rights. Have you guys heard of fracking yet?
Yeah.
Fracking is extracting the gases underground. And so we're going to start, especially you, Graham, down east, we're going to start seeing that more and more. So if they sever those gas rights, when they come in and frack, when they take those gases, you don't have rights to those gases.
What about if you in a HOA community?
It depends. All HOAs are different. So there is no one across the board answer for an HOA community. So it depends whether or not those, who gets those when they're severed or not, if they are severed.
When you say severed, meaning the owner can willingly give it up and sell it to the
Sure,
oil?
you can sell it, you can rent it,
But,
absolutely.
but they can't take it if you own the land because you own the subsurface rights and the air rights above it, except for
Not
the,
unless they get the courts involved and the judge
Right.
takes it from you.
right,
So if they want to come in and start fracking, Phil, they're probably not knocking on your door and asking permission to frack.
right,
They're going straight to the top on this one, aren't they?
right, yes.
So you'll get a letter one day. Says so-and-so are us has permission. It's a very severing rights is a very legal process. We almost always have the courts involved.
That's when they get like
somebody's
eminent
asking about
domain and all that,
waves.
right?
I'm sorry.
That's when they get into like eminent domain and all that sort of stuff, correct? For public use.
Yep,
like sell
Yep,
it. Okay.
exactly. Yep. Eminent domain, the government taking your property, the judge taking your property. It can happen, and that's coming in Unit 5. Yep. Somebody's asking about waves. Waves, if it has a tide. So you might have like a river that kind of just splashes. What we talk about a tide is does it, so if you have waves on a river, no, that's still riparian. But if the tide goes up or down, then we're looking at littoral. Yep. Maybe a lake, you can see some waves sometimes, but that water level, I mean, it adjusts as we go in rains and droughts, right? But it doesn't have a tide. I mean, we'll go down east and you have high tide, is it once a day or twice a day? See, it's been too long since I've been to the beach. Twice a day. See, I need to get to the beach. I don't remember how many times we have high tides. It's time. So those subsurface rights, of course, those subsurface rights. Another thing dealing with water rights, and we don't see this in North Carolina. This is how they do it out west. We're just mentioning it because you may, and I stress the word may, you may have a test question on your national section about the doctrine of prior appropriation. So we don't do this here. This is how they handle water rights out west. And basically what the doctrine of prior appropriation says is the first one to show up and make claim to the land wins. They have those rights. So you very well out west may own land bordering water, but have no right to the water. They don't do riparian. Also with water comes some terms, again, just a very basic understanding of some water terms. These water terms affect boundaries. Water can change boundaries, right? We pretty much know flowing water can do what it wants to do. And if it wants to move earth, if it wants to move soil, then that's what it's going to do. So how these water rights, how these terms affect our boundaries. Again, just a basic understanding. Accretion is a gradual increase in land from water, this deposited soil there. Reliction is the increase in land when it permanently recedes. So it permanently increases the land, reduces the water. Erosion is gradual wearing away of land. The water takes the land with it. And then an avulsion would be a sudden act of nature. So think about a mudslide, a water slide, something like that, that can like move large amounts of land, large amounts of dirt. So again, these are all page 24, top 24. Just a basic understanding so you can know what those words mean. Other rights that homeowners have dealing with support. So homeowners have a support right, lateral support, which means you have the right, if your neighbor comes in and starts digging, you have the right to make sure that they make sure that your land doesn't cave in on their hole. Can you guys see this? I mean, the land's up here and they're digging way down here. If this wasn't supported right here, this would all slide down when they started digging. And as a homeowner, you have the right to make sure that your land is supported when your next door neighbor starts digging. You don't want your home to slide into their hole. Another support right that homeowners have is subjacent support. This is the right to have the surface supported underneath. When it comes to subjacent support, I tend to think of our coal mines up in West Virginia. Another good example of severing subsurface rights. Coal mines are like miles beneath the Earth's surface, miles beneath the Earth's surface. And as they go down and they start digging in coal mines, them digging down there shouldn't affect your property up here on the surface because you have those subjacent supports. Other questions on our rights? So let's revisit this personal property, real property conversation. Let's talk a little bit more about what we mean by personal property and real property. So first off, an easy definition for personal property. Anything that's not real property. Real property is permanently attached. It's affixed in a way that it's not meant to go easily. You guys are going to learn fairly early, probably sooner rather than later. Real estate is one of these industries where we have several different words that have the same meaning. So we need to make sure we address the words because any of these are going to be a good candidate for the test. So personal property can also be referred to as personality. It can also be referred to as chattel. And again, this distinguishing feature of personal property, we can pick it up and move it. So before we talk more about fixtures and personal property, one thing to differentiate between personal property and real property are our outdoor plants and whether or not they are real property or personal property. By the way, let me go back for 1 second. Are you guys good going forward on my PowerPoints if I refer to personal property as PP and real property as RP? So going forward, so I have to type over and over and over again. And I know some of you are writing, so you don't have to write over and over and over again. When we say PP, we're referring to personal property. RP is referring to real property. So talking about our outdoor plants, and the question is, are they real property or personal property? And the answer is, it depends. Our fructose naturals, these are our plants that we plant and then we're done. We don't have to do anything else with them. So think about our bushes, our shrubbery, our trees. We don't have to cultivate them annually. These are referred to, if they're in the ground, these are referred to as real property. Fructose industrials are our emblements, our fruits of the industry, if you will. And these are our crops. So our corn, soy, wheat, all that good stuff. These are things that we have to plant each year. They don't come back on their own. If you want corn this year, you got to plant corn. Whether or not they're real property or personal property depends. If it's a tenant farmer, if their lease runs up before they've cultivated their crop, that crop is considered personal property, which means if the lease runs up, the tenant farmer can come back on the land to harvest this year's crop. Now, they're not going to be able to plant again next year because the lease ran out. If it's a farmer seller and they're selling their property, that's considered real property. They need to leave it behind unless we can make other arrangements. I want you guys to understand something early. The parties to the contract can agree to whatever they want to, as long as it's legal. So could we always come in and agree to something different than what we're saying here? Could we always agree to allow this for sale farmer to come back and get his crops this year? Could we agree to do that? Yes. That's the what if trail you guys need to stay away from. Because what do we need to know about implements? If it's for lease, if it's a tenant farmer, they're considered personal property. If it's for sale, if it's a tenant or farmer seller, that's considered real property. Real property can become personal property. Personal property can become real property. We can convert these things. Severance is converting something from real property to personal property. Annexation is converting it from personal property to real property. Some of you may have a ceiling fan in your home. Maybe when you bought your home, you hated that ceiling fan. Like you were almost not going to buy this home because of that ceiling fan. It's hideous. It's horrible. You hate it. Every time you walk in the room, you're like, oh God, that ceiling fan. That ceiling fan is right now is real property. It's attached to the ceiling. It's affixed to the ceiling in a way it's not falling on your head when you walk underneath it, right? That's considered something called a fixture, which we will talk about in a second. If you want to take that ceiling fan down, you can get your ladder and your tools and get up there and you can remove it from the ceiling, can't you? You can sever it from the structure. You've converted it from real property. Now you have a ceiling fan in your hand that's personal property. So now you go to Lowe's, you find the ceiling fan that you like. When you come home from Lowe's, that's personal property, right? You're carrying that thing in a box. That's pretty movable, personal property. You annex it, you attach it and affix it in a way that it becomes a fixture. So real property can convert to personal property can convert to real property. Are you guys ready for your first red star? I'm not playing around. We're jumping right into it. Your first red star, your first level 3 topic, which means you need a very full understanding of fixtures. A fixture is an item that was once personal property. You carried it in here, or it could have been carried in here, but it's been converted to real property by being attached in some such a way that it's meant to be permanent. The old saying in the industry is if it's nailed, screwed, or glued, bolted or welded, those are pretty permanent things, right? Welding something to the wall, bolting it, attaching it to the ceiling or the wall. So fixtures have been attached in a way that they are meant to be permanent. And whether or not something is a fixture or personal property is very important to your buyers. It's very important to your sellers. It's really important that we help our clients understand what are fixtures and personal properties. Our sellers need to know what they can take without negotiations. Our buyers need to know what they're going to get without negotiations. So what we're going to do now that we've introduced this to you, we're going to go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, we're going to talk specifically about fixtures, how we can better determine things that are fixtures of personal property. So let's take, oh goodness, it's our last break already, isn't it? So let's take 10, our last break for the day. When we come back, we'll talk more about fixtures. we doing? We good for the last hour? Good for the first day. Day one down already. Goodness, it goes fast, y'all. So let me take attendance. And let's talk more about fixtures. So before we jump in the PowerPoint, let's look at our books for just a second. Turn with me, if you will, page 26 and 27. So what we're looking at on 26 and 27 is a list of things that are considered fixtures when you are using this offer to purchase and contract. So specifically, this is our offer to purchase and contract 2T that we will see and we will meet and get very acquainted with in Unit 10. So we will have a very good understanding of this sales contract when we get to Unit 10. But for right now, our contract, this contract, gives us a list of things that are considered fixtures. This very list also shows up in the listing agreement that we use when we're working with sellers to list their home. And when we're working with sellers, we want the sellers to go through this list. And we're going to ask the sellers, do you plan on taking anything on this list? Because if you do, we need to have a conversation about it. Any fixture can be removed. The seller can take whatever they want to, but we need to have a conversation about it. So let's say, for example, you're at your listing appointment and you're talking to the seller and you're going through the home and you're looking at various things, identifying what will and will not convey. And you get to the dining room and the seller points out grandma's antique chandelier. This has been in my family for 100 years. It's a fixture. It's a chandelier. It's attached to the ceiling. Yes. And it's a fixture. Are we going to look at that seller and say, sorry, that's a fixture. You have to leave grandma's antique chandelier behind? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Instead, what we're going to do is have a conversation with the seller. When do you plan on taking this chandelier down? In a perfect world, the seller would take down the chandelier and replace it with another fixture for the dining room that fits that space. Don't leave me a light bulb on a string. You know, go to Lowe's and get something that looks nice in that space. Ideally, we would take down, or the seller would take down and replace grandma's antique chandelier before a buyer ever saw it. Thus, it's never a thing. The buyer doesn't know what they don't know, right? So if they never see it, they never know it was a thing. Do we live in a perfect world? No. Some sellers are going to take that chandelier down. Other sellers are going to look at you and say, yeah, I've never not eaten a meal under this chandelier in this home, and I'm not going to start now. I'm not taking that chandelier down until I move out. Okie doke. In that case, as the listing agent, it becomes my responsibility to make sure that every single buyer that looks at that home knows when they buy, the day they get their keys and walk in this front door, that chandelier will not be there. Now, can we negotiate something to go in that place? Can we request the seller to put something in, right? Can we work that out between buyer and seller? Of course we can. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, can the seller take the fixture? And the answer is yes. If they're going to take it before we list, not an issue. If a buyer's going to see it, maybe in person or online looking at pictures, we have a duty to make sure that all buyers know that these fixtures are excluded. We'll check our contract out in Unit 10, and we're going to see we have a place to exclude fixtures. Buyers and sellers, fixtures and personal property are absolutely a negotiable thing between buyer and seller. And we have a place to include personal property and exclude fixtures. There's one thing not on this list that many people, well, it's hard not to see what's not there. So one thing not on this list that many people expect to see is the refrigerator. The refrigerator is not a fixture. The refrigerator is personal property. Can't you just unplug that thing and roll it right out the front door? Pretty movable, yes? The refrigerator is not probably, it is the #1 negotiable personal property item. Whether or not the seller leaves the refrigerator is negotiations with the buyer and seller. I'm going to say after refrigerator for personal property, the next negotiable item comes the washer and dryer. Remember, you guys, please always remember, anything is negotiable. So technically, could we negotiate and include every single piece of furniture in this house? Could I get you the couch and the nightstand and what else you want? You like that ottoman? I can get you that too. Can we negotiate any? Sure. What we need to understand with personal property and fixtures, personal property is meant to go. So in other words, when the seller packs and moves out, that personal property goes with them. Fixtures are meant to stay, which means when the seller packs and moves out, that's still there. If either personal property or fixture are going to do the opposite of their intent, it needs to be in the contract, in the agreement between the buyer and the seller. So if we negotiate for the seller to leave the fridge, but take the chandelier, both of those have to be in the contract because that's that agreement, that's that negotiation about fixtures. Our contract, by the way, also goes on to say, you don't see it here on pages 26 and 27, but it does go on to say that if the seller does take a fixture, they have a duty to repair. They must repair. So they can't just jerk it out the wall or the ceiling and leave a big hole in it. They need to somehow repair. And again, maybe we can negotiate, the seller replacing the chandelier, whatever the two want to work out. But contractually, the seller's obligated to not just leave a big hole in the wall. They have to repair once they take something out. Would it surprise you guys if I told you that sometimes fixtures and personal property, sometimes these land buyers and sellers in court arguing about what's a fixture and what's a personal property, what should stay and what should go? I hate to say people get petty, but you know what? We like to get petty as people, don't we, sometimes? Ooh, we like to get petty. And if it gets down to the end, we may want to be haggling over what's a fixture and what's a personal property. Bottom line, you guys, put real estate aside for a second. Pretend that real estate doesn't even exist. If two parties can't agree to agree, the judge will decide for them. So if you have buyers and sellers that can't agree on what's a fixture and what's a personal property, the only resolution, I can offer my opinion, but what does my opinion mean as a real estate agent? Yeah, not much, right? I can whip out my pre-licensing book and says, this is what the book says. But at the end of the day, what's that mean to the buyer and the seller that are haggling over this fixture of personal property? So if two parties can't agree to agree, they take it for the judge to determine if it's a fixture of personal property. And if it gets to the judge is going to determine that by performing what's known as the total circumstance test. And the total circumstance test is the judge's way of determining, is this a fixture? Is it meant to stay? Or is this personal property? Is this meant to go? I have always heard in all my years that if you see a fixture listed in an offer to purchase and contract, like for example, pages 26 and 27, it is there because of the result of a lawsuit. We've just added 2 more fixtures to this list since your book printed or reprinted. So they're constantly up to, you get a lawsuit, okay, now we got a fixture, personal property. This list is constantly growing based on these outcomes of the total circumstance test. So if this is taken to a judge, the judge is going to ask a series of questions to determine if it's fixture or personal property. And those questions we can remember by remembering IRMA. The judge is going to ask the intent of the annexor. The annexor is the one attaching it, the one annexing it. So what was the intent? Did they mean for it to be permanent, or did they intend for it to be removed at some point? The judge is going to ask, what's the relationship of the item in question to the person that attached it? Was this an owner or was this a tenant? What was the method of annexation? Like how permanently attached are we talking about here? Can it be removed without causing damage to the structure? And then the judge is also going to ask the adaptation to real estate. How does it adapt to this property? Is it custom built? Is it custom designed? Is it built specifically for this property? So based on IRMA, based on the outcome, in each situation, the judge will determine if it's a fixture meant to stay or a personal property and meant to go. By the way, just FYI, the two fixtures added that you don't see on 26 and 27 are exercise equipment, because we know when the pandemic hit, we all ran out and bought, well, some of you, I didn't, some of you ran out and bought exercise equipment. You get like some of those tonal mirrors, you know what I'm talking about? And they attach to the wall, don't they? In a way that they're not meant to come down. So now included in our list are exercise and related equipment. Also included are thermostats now. Not so much the old school thermostats. Our houses are getting really smart, aren't they? So smart technology, smart devices, smart thermostats are obviously becoming a thing in real estate. We'll talk about those smart things when we get to Unit 10 and we do the deep dive in our offer to purchase and contract. But again, this is a good list for us to see here. We're not studying it, but it's good to help us look over just to kind of get an idea for things that are considered fixtures. Understand when I'm using this contract. If I'm using a different contract, could my fixture list look different? Absolutely. So each contract is going to have a different list. The reason we look at this one is because this is the most common. This is the most common. This is the one that we're going to study. So I thought I saw another hand, but Cody, I see you. And if you had your hand up, if you could put it back up and I'll get you after Cody.
So one thing that I was always told, think of it this way: if you flip your house upside down, whatever moves is personal property.
That's perfect, Cody. And it sure does paint a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, take your house, shake it around. If it falls off, personal property. If it doesn't, that's fixture. I love that visual. It'd be fun to do that one day. Yes, sir, George.
So I just want to be clear with this one. Let's say you have if the buyer and the seller, they agree that the refrigerator is going to stay. Let's say the refrigerator is going to stay. Mm-hmm. If they agree orally and it's not put in the contract.
That's right, George.
By the time the buyer gets the house, the refrigerator is not there. He has nothing to say.
That's right. That's right. So George, you're absolutely right. An oral agreement, a handshake agreement, a yeah, I'm leaving the fridge. That's not going to get you anywhere in a court of law. So we got to have that stuff in the contract, because heaven forbid this ever winds up in front of a judge. The judge needs all the information in writing. They can't do anything with our side negotiations. Does that make sense? So you're absolutely right, George. Taking that fixture means nothing if it doesn't wind up in the contract. Leaving the personal property means nothing if it doesn't wind up in the contract. So that contract is the final end all be all.
Thank you.
Of course. So you guys set your chats to everyone if they're not. Set your chat to everyone. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put a picture up. By the way, this is that class participation thing that we talked about. So let's look at a picture of a kitchen. This was a listing I had several years ago, and this is probably one of my favorite listings. It was Such a nice, neat, immaculate home. Like when I tell you you could eat off the basement floor in this home, I'm not kidding. It was nice. So everything about this home was just precious. Why don't you guys tell everybody in a chat, if you were in this kitchen, what are some things that you would consider a fixture? Mm. Look at you guys go. So what is a fixture? So while you guys are still typing, let's see. I'm going to go back up to the top and kind of work through some of these. Obviously, we can't go through all these, but let's talk about some of these things. Several of you have said the microwave. In this case, the microwave is a fixture because it's attached in a way that it's not falling on the stove. Now, what if? What if this microwave was sitting on the counter right here and just plugged into the wall? Now it's personal property because you unplug that thing and take it away, right? The only reason it's considered a fixture right now is because it's attached. It's affixed in a way that if you took this kitchen and shook it upside down, that microwave is not going to budge. The stove, a couple people say the stove. Again, that one gets a little tricky. When you're using our offer to purchase and contract and most offer to purchase and contracts, the stove is considered a fixture. It's the expectation when you buy a home that there's a stove there. So using our contract in most contracts, builders contracts, for example, are going to see the stove. Let's see. I got the coffee maker. The coffee maker is not attached. It's just plug in and sitting on the counter. We can unplug that and take it out to the moving truck, right? So that's something when you buy, this coffee maker is not going to be here. This coffee maker is not going to be, the island. I saw that come up. Okay, again, islands depend. Some islands are attached. Some islands have wheels that you can move them around everywhere. I don't know how well you guys can see in this picture. I got to look to see it. But if you look very closely, there's an outlet right there, which means when you plug it in, you got electricity. So this kitchen island is considered a fixture because it's attached. Shake your head, yes or no. What about the bar stools? Are those a fixture? I see no's, but they match. They were painted to match the island. Doesn't that make them a fixture? No, it's not whether or not they match and how well they're decorated. It comes down to, can you pick it up and move it? Now, would most buyers ask for those bar stools with their personal property? Would a lot of sellers agree to leave those bar stools? Probably, because they match, right? But understand, unless negotiated otherwise, those bar stools are personal property and they're going to go when the seller goes. What else we got? Microwave, outlet covers. That's a good one. Your outlet covers and again, these are screwed into the wall. Pick the house out, shake them upside down. They're not going to fall off. Let's see, the cabinets. Yes, the kitchen cabinets, the things that are attached to the wall, both high and low. What about the stuff in the cabinets? They're going to pack them up and take those with them, aren't they? Let's see. Lighting. Yep, we got some recessed lighting from there it is. We got some lighting from the ceiling attached to the ceiling. We also have some under cabinet lighting here. You guys see that? Again, all that lighting is attached. So when the buyer buys, they can expect that to be there. If there's a garbage disposal, yep, we can't see it in their picture, but if there's a disposal under there, that would be a fixture. I think we're getting a good idea. Ooh, that's a good one. Thank you. The shades. The shades are attached, aren't they? Let's talk about curtains for a second. The rod is attached. The fabric is not. The fabric just slides off the rod, right? The rod is what is attached to the wall. So when the seller moves out, they can take their fabric, they can take their curtains, unless negotiated otherwise, but they should leave the rod. Same thing with like a flagpole. A flagpole that's attached to the side of the house. That, or the pole, or the holder, that's what's attached. The flag just slides in. So you may have things that are attached but aren't permanently attached. They slide off and on. It's what's permanently attached. Let's see. You're going to notice in your fixture list, there's TV brackets for the flat screen TVs. That was added when we started moving from those box TVs, the flat screen TVs. The TV buyers are going to walk in the front door and say, does a 70-inch screen TV come with the house? Of course, I always say, anything's negotiable, right? Talk money, the seller will listen, right? But really think about it. That TV just slides onto the brackets. When the seller's moving out, they slide that TV off, the brackets are still there. So it's the difference in, Cody, I can't tell you how much I like that. If you pick the house up and shake it, whatever falls loose is personal property. Whatever does not is considered a fixture. Questions on fixtures or personal property?
Just one, and this is kind of dumb, but I'm just curious. On above the door, there's like decorative plates or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know sometimes they're on like a little stand or something like that. My mom's got them in her house with her.
Right.
So I can't tell if those are actually attached to the house or not.
So they're going to be, the nail is going to be attached to the house. The plate just slides off and on the nail.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yep. So they can take their plates. A dishwasher is considered a fixture. So yeah, you got fixtures that attach, and then you got things that slide on and off the fixtures, the plates, the curtains, that kind of thing. Yep.
So here's a tricky one. The house we bought in Wake Forest years ago, they left the brackets over the fireplace, but they forgot to leave the attached bracket that was on the back of the TV that hooks into the thing.
Oh, well, that's on the TV.
Right.
I agree with you, Phil. And this was a big deal when this hit our fixture list, because a lot of people say, but that bracket fits that TV. I mean, the two come together. And I agree with you completely. But apparently the judge doesn't agree with that, because the bracket on the TV, that's the piece that can go. So I guess, I mean, we've come a long ways in flat screen TVs. Yes. I mean, some of you may not even remember anything other than a flat screen TV. So we've come a long ways. And I think now if you're moving, if you're taking your TV, you can better find that hardware, that equipment to make a fixture in your new home. But yeah, it's something. And is it a point of negotiation? If you really want your bracket, can we negotiate it? Anything is negotiable. Yeah, a lot of us got upset with the TV thing when that came out. I remember that. So these fixtures, personal property that we're talking about, are primarily for residential. As we branch away from residential, we start dealing with other types of fixtures. So another type of fixture that we have is the trade fixtures. Trade fixtures are fixtures installed by the tenant to conduct their trade, to conduct their business. And in North Carolina, those trade fixtures are considered personal property of the tenant, which means at the end of the tenancy, the tenant can take their fixtures with them. They can unattach them. They have to repair the damage to the property that they made. So again, they just can't jerk them out of the wall or jerk them off the floor and say, here you go, I'm leaving you with a big hole in the wall. They have to repair, replace. If the tenant skips out in the middle of the night, abandons their lease, and abandons their trade fixtures, those trade fixtures become real property of the landlord. So some examples of this tenant conducting their trade. I tend to think more towards like retail. Like go to a clothing store, aren't there racks and shelves? We're going to look at an example of a restaurant in just a second. These are the tenant we're talking about. They're conducting their trade. They're conducting their business. Yes, ma'am, D.
All right, quick question, because currently I rent, and I had a situation where I don't have a screen door on my house, and I asked the landlord, can I add one? And they said yes, but I cannot take it at the end. So is that something that's optional, or is that just the landlord itself?
That's an agreement between you and your landlord, but technically you're adding a fixture to his property, right? Or to their property. So that would be the residential. Yeah, that would be the residential side of it. But yeah, if you can take your screen door, then you need to negotiate that with your landlord. Because technically you've attached it, right? You've attached something to their property. So trade fixtures, again, the tenant installs them to conduct their trade. One example we gave was the restaurant. I mean, like, look at this hood. Look at this sucker. What the heck are they cooking? This thing is attached in a way it's not coming down, is it? You got the hood vent, even the stove, the air fryers, these things, they're probably attached to the wall. We don't want them to tip over on us. All these racks, all these shelves. If the tenant came in and installed, I mean, even you guys see this back here, the little screen to hold your utensils and stuff, the pegboard, I guess. If the tenant came in and installed any of these fixtures, what the trade fixture rule says is that at the end of the tenancy, they can take them out. They can take their fixtures. Again, they just got to replace or repair, excuse me. They just got to repair any damage they cause for removal. Check out this microwave. This one's just sitting on a shelf, right? So this wouldn't be a question, even if these things were a question, because that would be a fixture. Now it's sitting on a shelf, though. It's suspended in a way that it's sitting on a shelf. If the tenant installed that shelf, the tenant can take the shelf with them. And if they don't, they become real property of the landlord. The landlord can do with them as they will. It was a couple of years ago, we started having a lot of our Rite Aids shut down. I have one, I live in High Point. Well, actually I live in Archdale, but if you don't know Archdale, I'm just outside. And there was one in Rite Aid that shut down in High Point, and there was a big sign out front, big yellow banner out front that said, shelves and racks available for sale. And what that told me is when Rite Aid moved out, either they chose not to take their shelves or rack, or they left them on purpose. But either way, now that they were gone, the owner, the landlord, obviously they didn't want to use it for that purpose. So they had those things for sale. It was their property now. They could do what they wanted. Trade fixtures. Another category of fixtures that we have are agricultural fixtures. These are most similar to our residential fixtures. Once they're attached, even if they're attached by a tenant farmer, they automatically become real property of the landlord. So in other words, when the tenant farmer's tenancy is over, they cannot take those agricultural fixtures unless they have permission, unless they have agreement from the landlord to do so. But agricultural fixtures, once they're attached, they become real property of the landlord. So if we look at a picture, y'all ready to go, oh, ready? Oh, goats. Aren't goats fun? Okay, so this tenant farmer has goats, and this tenant farmer, presumably, installed this feeding trough. Now this thing is attached, right? Because if this little guy was sitting on this thing and it wasn't attached, it'd topple over. So this thing is attached. I'm guessing it's like buried in the ground down here a little bit. Even with this fence, if the tenant farmer installed the feeding trough in the fence when they moved in, agricultural fixtures said that those become real property of the landlord, and they cannot be removed without special agreement, without negotiations. Questions on fixtures? So if we have some regulations on fixtures, then we also have some regulations on personal property. And those regulations on personal property are covered under the North Carolina Uniform Commercial Code, also known as the UCC. And specifically, this addresses personal property that's not yet owned by the seller. They bought it on credit. Now, they didn't go out and buy the credit card. They bought it on credit. They went straight to the seller of the water heater, bought the water heater on credit. The owner of the water heater allowed them to use the water heater and make payments on it. The owner of the water heater also filed a security agreement. So we signed something saying, I owe you this money. Bottom line, you guys, the seller can't convey what's not theirs. So if the seller has items that are leased and not yet owned, that's considered personal property until it's paid in full. So here we go. What if you're at a listing appointment? We have a place in our listing agreement and the contract to address items that are leased and not yet owned. They got us covered. We're at the listing appointment. We have a conversation with the seller, and the seller says, I'm still making payments on my water heater. What do we do? Well, technically, they can't convey it. I think when we buy a home, the expectation is that it comes with certain things, like, for example, a water heater. I think the home has more value if it comes with a water heater, a roof, a heating system, right? They're just things that we expect to see. We need to have a conversation with the seller at this point and find out what they intend to do. Again, ideally, we probably want them to get this thing paid off, at least through the proceeds of the sale of the home. We want to get this thing paid off so it does become real property and it will convey with the property. However, if the seller doesn't do it, then we need to figure out negotiations between buyer and seller. So the buyer needs to understand that when they buy, there won't be a water heater. It's not the seller's to convey until they own it. Question comes in, who does this protect, the buyer or the seller? It protects the person issuing the water heater. This person has a security agreement. And by the way, they may even record this downtown. So this comes up. So when a buyer is buying, they hire an attorney does a search of the public records, and they find this thing if they record it. We're going to talk all about recording, what we record and why. That's coming in Unit 5. So bear with me on that, please. So the UCC is protecting the creditor, the person that's issuing this on credit. And the big thing they say is you bought it on credit and they have a security agreement. Again, they may choose to take that extra step to record it, to put it on public records, just to protect their interest. But this is why our listing agreement, when we're working with the sellers, and our sales contract gives us these things. They give us talking points, if you will. So when we're doing the listing agreement with seller, again, this comes up. Do you have anything that you're making payments on that you don't yet own? And that's what we need to address if they do. Also with personal property versus real property, we may be dealing with manufactured or mobile homes. So now the question is a mobile home personal property and real property? And the answer is, it depends. If the mobile home is still on wheels, if it has a hitch, if it has a title with the DMV, it is considered personal property. All you got to do is hook that bad boy up to the back of a truck and away you go. When you remove the wheels, when you remove the hitch, you put it on a permanent foundation and you cancel the title with the DMV, you have just converted that personal property to real property. Because now you can't hook it up to a truck and drive it away. So titled wheels and hitch is personal property. Foundation, and cancel the title. Now it becomes real property. You've just converted it. Another thing really gaining in importance, we're starting to see that, or not importance, but popularity. We're seeing this more and more and more. Are modular houses. Modular houses are built off-site in large sections. Maybe they're built room by room or floor by floor, section by section. So there's this huge warehouse somewhere that builds sections of a home. They plop that section on the back of a truck. They drive it into the lot. Uh-oh, can you guys not hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, so we're going to get Jennifer to restart. So they build them in big sections in this huge warehouse somewhere. They plop it on the back of a truck. They bring it to the site, and then it's assembled on site. Once it's assembled on site, then it's considered real property. Have you guys ever been driving down the highway and seen like half a house? Very well could be what's going on right here. Half the house is coming, the other half is either on its way or right behind it. Modular housing. Once it's assembled, once it's constructed on site, it becomes real property. Questions? Fixtures, personal property. Again, anybody that heard nothing you lose in pre-licensing is going to apply to the real world. You go back and you tell that person, I learned today on day one, but that's not true. Yeah, do I have a question? Switching gears just a bit, Unit 2 just kind of seems to jump around all over the place. So we got several weird topics in Unit 2. So switching gears just a bit, let's switch to another topic. And now we're going to talk about an estate. An estate is your legal relationship to the property. It's your relationship to the property. It's your interest. What interest do you have in this property? When you guys see the word interest, or excuse me, I just gave you the answer. When you guys see the word estate, I want you to see the word interest. Write it down, circle it, highlight it. When you see the word estate, what we're referring to is the amount and type of interest that an individual has in real property. And for our purposes, we have two types of interests, two types of estates. Our first type of estate is our estate of ownership, also referred to as a freehold estate. That's what we're getting ready to talk about right now. The other type of interest we have is a leasehold estate. This is an interest of possession. If you have a leasehold estate, you have permission to live there, or permission to be there. You are a tenant. We will talk about our leasehold estates. Unit 11 is dedicated to the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. So we will talk about that relationship. But right now, we're just going to focus on freehold estates, which are estates of ownership. Your interest in this property is that you own it. There's a couple different types of freehold estates. If you guys will, turn with me in your book on page 29. And you can see that freehold estates, I'm a visual person. Anybody else a visual person? I like the pictures. The pictures help me see it. So use the pictures in your book. They're there for a reason. So we can see with the freehold estate, there are two different types of freehold estates. Ownership estates can either be inheritable or not inheritable. And again, we're going to talk about each of these. We're going to break these down. So what you're looking at the screen is the same thing we're looking at on page 29. We're going to take these freehold estates and we're going to break them down. Some of them can be inherited when the owner passes away. Others of them cannot be inherited when the owner passes away. So the most common form of ownership, the most common estate, the one that you will see 99.9% of the time in real estate transactions. Don't write that down. I just made that number up. But the one that you're going to see the most of the time is called a fee simple absolute. This is your highest form of ownership. You own it all. You own the land, you own the air, you own the rights. It's all yours. It can be inherited when the owner passes away. And you have no limitations on time or use. You can own it as long as you want to. And as long as you're not breaking the rules, breaking the law, you can do whatever you want to with it. You have no limitation to your ownership. Again, you guys, this is what we deal with the majority of the time. All these other estates that we're getting ready to talk about, if these ever come up in your career, this is when we know we need to get an attorney involved. Because dealing with any other type of these estates got out of our realm. We got out of our lane. And this is one of these, if you're listing a property for sale, you're helping a buyer buy, and they don't have this fee simple absolute, what that tells me, we got to get the attorney involved. They get to figure this stuff out, not me and you. So what are these other types of freehold estates? Well, we have a fee simple defeasible, also known as a qualified fee estate. These estates have a restriction on the use. Now, these are going to be deeded restrictions. You know, when you buy the property, that you can or cannot use the property in a certain way. That's what we mean by deeded. They're pertinent. What do we decide a pertinent means? They run with the land. So there's restrictions on how you can and cannot use the land. And there's two types of fee simple defeasible. The first type, I don't know where they come up with these names. Fee simple subject to condition subsequent. Goodness, that's a lot to say. With these, it says the owner can do whatever you want to on the property, except for this one thing. You use it whatever you want. I don't care what you do with it, but there's one thing you're not allowed to do. For example, if you buy property and maybe the deeded restriction is you can't sell alcohol. Can't sell alcohol on the property. You do whatever you want to on it. The moment that you sell one beer, when you break the rules, you lose the property. You know the rules going into it. And when you break the rules, when you violate the use, you lose the property. How do they know that you sold a beer on the property? I have no idea. But somehow they found out that you break the rules. The grantor is the one that gave you the property. That's the one that sold the property to you. And they sold you this with this restriction. You knew when you bought it. You were not surprised. You knew. And they sold you this property with this restriction. They find out that you sold a beer. They go to court, and the court grants them their property back. Isn't that something? So you can do whatever you want to, except this one thing. The other fee simple defeasible we have is called a fee simple determinable. Fee simple determinable says you can only use the property for one purpose. This is its only allowable use. And the moment you do anything that's not this allowable use, you've broken the rules and you lose the property. So let's say the deed restriction says you can only use this property for religious purposes. The moment you do something non-religious on this property, you've broken the rules. In this case, the grantor, the person that gave you the property, does not have to go to court. Because in a fee simple determinable, it's already been determined. You break the rules, you lose the property, it automatically goes back to the grantor. So let's look at an example together. The grantor deeds land to a school district that specifically says, for so long as the school district maintains a public elementary school on the parcel, if it ceases to do so, the estate shall end immediately. What's the only allowable use on this property? Not just any school, is it? Specifically, it's a public elementary school. Could I put a private school up? Could I put a high school up? No. Specific use. I can only use this for a public elementary school. The school district has a fee simple determinable. If at some point they do not maintain that public elementary school, then the title goes back to the grantor, the person that they got the land from. If the grantor is no longer with us, then their heirs will get the property. So again, a fee simple defeasible, there's two types, fee simple defeasible. What both of them do is restrict the use, how you can use the land. Questions on that?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
If somebody says that their land cannot be developed, would that be a fee simple defeasible?
Sure. Sure. If they wanted to add that, we got to get an attorney, right, to add the restriction. So yeah, I mean, you could have fun with this, right? Like I could say something like, the only allowable color for my front door is canary yellow. And I could put that in the deed, and you buy this house knowing that the only color you can have for your front door is canary yellow. We could get very, why do people do things like this? Well, maybe the land has sentimental value to you. Maybe the land has been, your family's had this land and this is how it's been used, and you want to make sure that that use continues. Or maybe you're anti a use like serving alcohol and you want to prohibit that from happening, right? So why do people do it? I mean, there's various reasons, but yeah, technically you're spending time with an attorney and poof, you can create a fee simple defeasible. Isn't that something?
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. The other type of freehold estates, or another type of freehold estates, are our life estates. Life estates are maybe inheritable, they're maybe not. We'll distinguish those as we talk about the three different types. Life estates are sometimes referred to as partial estates because they don't last forever. A life estate is only going to last for the life of somebody. And the life estate will have to identify who that body is. And when that body is no longer alive, the life estate is over. So life estates have a restriction on time. How long you own it depends on how long said person is alive. Now, I'm going to leave you with that. That's a heck of a place to leave things, isn't it? But this is a great place to start. So don't go anywhere just yet. because I do want to take just a second and talk about what next week's going to look like. So let me get out of this. So when we come back together on Tuesday, we're going to pick back up in Unit 2. We're on Life Estates on page 31. If you haven't had a chance to get through Unit 2 yet, please look through the rest of it. We're going to talk about different types of ownership. We're going to talk about our community properties. After Unit 2, we get into Unit 3 next week. Unit 3 brings us our first piece of math. If math isn't your thing, you may want to consider, well, thank you. You may want to consider looking at the math concepts at the end of Unit 3. So that starts on page 63, which means we get to pick our calculators up next week. So please remember to go calculator shopping. Again, if you have any questions about what calculator to buy, never hesitate to reach out to me. If you have any question about anything real estate related, never hesitate to reach out to me. Sometimes you guys come to me and say, I'm sorry to bother you. You're not bothering me, y'all. This is why I'm here. Bother me. I'm begging you guys to bother me, please. Okay, so never hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, so we'll do the math, units 2, finish 2, do 3. We'll get into 4. We'll probably get started into 5 next week. So if you've looked ahead, if you continue to look ahead, finish 2, 3, 4, and 5. I appreciate today. I thought we had a great start today. Thank you, Phil, for your comment. Today was a good day. I do hope you heard me today when I said this class requires a commitment. This class requires your time. So please spend time this weekend getting that study time, getting that devoted time, that commitment. Get yourself caught up on your reading. Don't forget to send me your selfie with your introduction. Even if I know you, please still send it so we can have the records for this class. But otherwise, I think that's all I have to say. I'm giving you guys a couple minutes today. So there you go. Don't say I never gave you anything. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I start on time. So 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, we're going to rock it. We're going to roll next week. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys first thing Tuesday morning.
Thanks, Julie.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.